Are we good on? We are about to be good on LinkedIn. Let me check over on Rumble. Looks like we are active. Let me make sure the sound is right. We're good on sound. We're good on sound on Rumble. We're good on YouTube. Good on X. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Facebook, LinkedIn. We are active on LinkedIn. Good morning over there on LinkedIn. Good morning over there on Instagram. Kind of shadowy. Good morning over there on TikTok. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's had a great start to your week. James Collins 956 Duck Going Buck. Good morning. People, tell me your locations when you are checking in. Today's topic, we're going to talk about Donald Trump's alleged and purported and threatened defunding of NPR and PBS, and what this means in the bigger picture, because I don't really care about NPR or PBS, and I'm not a consumer of either one of them, but we're going to talk about it anyway, because this is something that people are talking about, and I think it has bigger implications on a higher level than just about NPR and PBS, and maybe many of you don't consume those platforms either. But we need to talk about it because, again, it's the president, and a lot of people have things to say about Trump in general, and they basically take anything that he does and they say, well, this is a reflection of something bigger or worse or better or further into the future is going to happen. So that's what we're going to talk about it. Sue said children watch PBS. Well, they can still watch it. I mean, it's not like the company's going to go out of business, but we're going to get into that. That's the topic here today. That's what we're going to discuss. So let me just give everybody a few seconds to see if to get things populated. Are we good on LinkedIn? We're good on LinkedIn, but the stream is looking kind of weak. I don't know what this is about over on LinkedIn, but Facebook, we're looking fine. Rumble, we're looking amazing. I think we got some extra light in here. I changed the way I put the blinds. I usually have the shade pointed up, but today I have it pointed down. So now more light from the sun is coming in. So it's just brighter in here today. I actually like this. So maybe we'll keep it this way. And let me introduce myself. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year professional athlete, author of 41 books, done 4 TEDx talks. I own this company called Work on Your Game. What we do here is work with professional service-based entrepreneurs on systematizing and scaling their businesses from the 6 to the 7-figure level. You can learn more about that and working with me by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. There's a link somewhere in my profile or on the pinned comment wherever you are consuming this. If you want to get that link, again, whatever platform you're on is in there somewhere. Now, I am streaming, just so all of you understand, to 7 different platforms right now: Rumble, YouTube, X, that's 3, Facebook 4, LinkedIn 5, Instagram is 6, and TikTok is 7. So I'm looking at different cameras right now while I'm recording. And also, when it comes to the commentary, I go through my material and whatever I'm going to say, I give myself a limit of right now, a limit of about an hour. So right now, as you can see in my timer, I got about 54 minutes to get through what I'm going to say. I don't always take that much time. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. After that, then I open the floor up for discussion. That's when I respond. I read and respond to comments that people are posting. So if you are leaving a comment while I am speaking, I will not be seeing your comment, and I'm not going to stop to address your comment unless I have specifically asked for a response from the audience. If I didn't, or I asked a rhetorical question, I'm not looking at the comments. So if you want me to actually see what you said and you want to actually have me reply to it, then wait till I get to the comments to leave your comment. Now, if you leave your comment while I'm talking right now, then maybe other people in the room can engage with you, but I'm not going to see it. So just in case anybody knows, so I don't want anybody getting frustrated because they feel like I'm ignoring their comments. I am ignoring your comment, but I'm telling you why I'm ignoring your comment until we get to the parts where I actually take comments. So let's get into this topic here today, which is Donald Trump defunding, or at least threatening to defund, or maybe about to defund NPR and PBS. NPR standing for National Public Radio, and PBS, the Public Broadcasting Systems. So again, people are really mad about this because people just get a little bit extra about anything that Donald Trump does, but that's okay. Since they do, we can use it for material, and that's the reason why we're having this conversation here today. So first thing you got to understand is that the defunding coming from the federal government of NPR and PBS do not mean that these companies are necessarily going to go out of business. It does affect their business because you're taking money away from them. Most businesses, when they're getting funding from somewhere, they use that money for something. But we do need to put things into proper perspective and understand what this means. So NPR gets 1% of its yearly budget from the federal government. 1% of its yearly budget comes from the federal government. So that equates for NPR to about $3 million. That's 1% for them, $3 million. And the federal government is threatening to take away that $3 million. When it comes to PBS, they get about 15% of their yearly budget from the federal government. So for them, that 15% equates to about $56 million. So this is a significant amount of money. $3 million, $56 million is a lot of money. If any of you was walking down the street and you were with Oprah Winfrey and Bill Gates and Elon Musk, and you all saw $3 million laying on the ground, all three of those people who are noted to be billionaires, they would all stop to pick up the money. So even though it may be percentage-wise not that big, we have to admit this is a significant amount of money. We took $3 million away from any company. There's something that they were doing with that $3 million that they can no longer do. So what the actual issue is for a lot of these, not a lot of them, but these two organizations, let's just use them since they're the topic here today, is that they use a lot of this money to fund local stations that broadcast their stuff. So NPR and PBS, when they broadcast to local networks, let's say here in Miami or where you are in Oklahoma or over there in California or in Alaska or anywhere else, they use that money to help these local stations that depend on them and depend on the federal funding that they're getting in order to broadcast their message. So this is going to affect them in some way. This is the reason why some people are upset about it, combined with the fact of who is doing it or who's getting the credit or the blame, depending on how you want to put it, for doing this. People are getting upset because Donald Trump's doing it on top of the fact that it may harm the ability for local networks and local stations to broadcast NPR's message or PBS's message to the local networks. Now, Trump's argument, his frame around this, and I'm taking some of his frame, I'm not taking everything that he said about it, but his frame around this is that NPR and PBS are biased, and they shouldn't be biased because they are funded by taxpayers, and tax paying is not biased. And everybody has to pay taxes. Taxes are taken straight out of your paycheck for many of you, and taxes are levied against you every time you make a purchase at retail for many of you as well. So since we are paying for these organizations to do what they do, then it doesn't make any sense for them to be biased and only lean one way, to the left or to the right, politically on what they talk about, because the money's coming from all of us. So why would they be leaning one direction or another direction? And he believes, this is what Trump is saying, again, I'm paraphrasing him, this is not a quote, that these platforms are no longer serving a neutral or essential role in American media. Now, of course, not everybody agrees with that. But this is what he's saying. This is the frame that they're using, the current administration. So that's why we got to discuss it. Now, I don't know if any of you saw, maybe this was maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when some people that are in power positions at NPR and PBS were brought into, I believe they were, I don't know what group this was in front of, but they were basically testifying. And they were being held accountable, I guess you can say, in Washington, D.C. And they were being grilled by some people who were just asking them questions about their practices and about the stuff that they put out and who works there. And are they leaning to the left or are they leaning to the right? Now, whenever you go to one of these hearings, especially if you know you're going there, there's one way to be invited to the hearing is you're invited as a person who is, let's say, an informed person on a certain subject, and they bring you in and say, hey, how can we help this situation? So let's just say they called me in there. They called me to Washington, D.C. and said, Dre, Baldwin, we want you to testify in front of Congress and tell us how we can help young men get better at personal and professional development. So they're not there to grill me or find out if I did anything wrong. That's one way you can get brought there. Another way you can get brought there is just as like an expert witness to explain certain things at levels that most people can't explain. Another way you can be brought there is if they may be looking to hold you accountable for some things they think maybe you're doing wrong. You want to see an example of this? You can see an example of Dr. Fauci getting brought before committees in Washington, D.C. over what he was advising and what he did and what he didn't do during the virus situation a few years ago. Another example is Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook getting brought there about the privacy violations that Facebook may have committed when they were doing what they were doing in terms of taking people's private information and selling it and using it in ways that they weren't supposed to. So it's different ways you can get brought there. These PBS and NPR people were brought there under that way. They were brought there to get grilled. They knew they were going to get grilled. They were prepared to be grilled. And when you're prepared to be grilled, especially when you're testifying under oath, basically what you do is you get coached by a person who knows the law really well. And they coach you on how, when you're asked a tough question that could put you in a bad spot, you're coached on how to answer the question in such a way that you are answering it, but you're also not incriminating yourself by saying something that could be proven to not be true. Even if the question is kind of like a gotcha question, is going to make you look bad if you answer it truthfully. You answer it, but you answer it in a way that you kind of step around the quicksand that can make you look bad. So that's what happened with these people from NPR and PBS in this hearing. If you didn't hear or see the hearing, the video is on YouTube. So any of you who hasn't seen it, you should go see it. And that kind of added fuel to the fire for why the Trump administration is doing what it's doing. I think they already decided they were going to do it before the hearing, but the hearing basically confirmed it. So one of the things that I remember from the hearing, there were a lot of things that got said. Any of you who's ever watched one of these governmental hearings, if you want to understand why someone like myself does not work in government and would not be interested in doing so, is because of things like those hearings. They are long, they are boring. For the most part, they're boring, and they are often long. And you just have to sit there. If you're a member of the committee or you're on whatever group that is supposed to be there, you got to sit there and listen to everybody talk. Everybody on the committee gets to ask their question. Everybody gets to wax poetic and stand on their soapbox and say their shit. And then you got to listen to these people answering the questions. Sometimes they're boring. They ain't really saying anything. And it's very procedural. It's a whole lot of procedure. It's a whole lot of administrative level stuff that you have to do when you work in government. And the room is all dark and drab, and it doesn't look like there's any windows in a room. It's kind of like a casino, but the opposite. It's like the inverse of a casino. There's this dark, drab room, and it's boring as hell. And I don't know if there's clocks in there, but there's damn sure no windows. Why would anybody want to sign up to do this for a living? I damn sure would not. But anyway, there are often some interesting parts from it. And what we used to do is depend on journalists to listen to the whole thing, and then they would tell you the interesting parts so that you didn't have to do it yourself. These days, because journalism is on life support, you pretty much have to get the information yourself. If you want to actually be what most of you call informed or educated, you have to get the information yourself. You cannot call yourself informed or educated these days because you heard something from somebody else, regardless of who it is. Because people are taking things out of context, and they usually lean their opinions and their conclusions in a direction that fits what they already believed. And if you happen to agree with them, fine, but that doesn't mean you're getting all the information. So that's why these days you got to do a little bit more work, actually a lot more work, to be informed than what we used to have to do back in the days, just so all of you understand that. And by the way, I'm going to take questions and comments at the end for those who are leaving comments while I'm talking. So during this hearing, I believe it was the NPR person. I don't know if it was the NPR or the PBS person, but it was the NPR. I think it was the NPR person. Might have been PBS. Doesn't matter. It was a woman, and she's like one of the head people there. And she was getting grilled about the political leanings of the staff who work at their organization. And the question, the way it was framed, was it was a gotcha question, but the question was getting her because they already gotten themselves. So it wasn't really unfair. They were saying, like, how do you have, of all these people who work at your organization, like 98% of them are all politically liberal and politically leaning to the left. How is that possible that everybody who works there is leaning to the left? You don't have any people who are leaning to the right. And the woman didn't really have an answer to the question. Again, she answered it in a legal way, such as to not step into hot water. And she was trained to not do that. So they train you to not do that when you're about to go to one of these hearings, because you can't, incriminate yourself in the way that you talk about these things. But it made them look bad. That was the whole point. The whole point of the hearing was to make them look bad. That's the reason why they called them up there, because the hearing gets broadcast to the world, and the people in the government understand that if we broadcast this to the world, the news networks are going to pick it up. Some civilians are going to see at least the clips of it. And this is the way the internet is these days, is that you can have a 2-hour conversation. People are going to take the clips, the 30-second clips out of context. And those 30-second clips will make somebody look really bad, and they'll only see the 30 seconds, and they're not going to see the whole 2 hours. And this made NPR and PBS look bad, and that greased the skids for what the Trump administration is now doing. This is the way it works. And the same way it can be used against one side politically, it can be used against the other side politically. So everybody is involved in this game. So Trump is arguing that these platforms are biased, and I just gave you some context as to how he can make this argument, because it ain't really a damn thing they could say when we're like, how are 95% of the people who work there, 98% of the people who work there leaning to the left instead of leaning to the right? You can't say that you're not biased when that's it. It's not like you randomly ended up that way. There's something that's happening within your organization that leads to that. And since they're no longer neutral, and then Trump is essentially saying, because they're not neutral, they're no longer essential, we are going to start defunding them and we're going to take money away from them. This is pretty much the only thing he can do if he doesn't like what some organization is doing. They're receiving federal funding. You've seen Trump do this, his administration at least. So when I say Trump, I mean the Trump administration doing this to any organization that's receiving federal funding. If he doesn't like what they're doing, he puts it out there. He floats the idea that he might do it. Then everybody reacts to the idea, the trial balloon. Then he might actually do it, or he says he's going to do it. Now, whether they've actually signed the paperwork and took the money away yet, I don't know. But then he says we're actually going to do it, and then this becomes an even bigger story. So I think they were doing it with a couple of colleges recently. Now they're doing the NPR and PBS. So critics are arguing. Here's what critics said, people who disagree with what Trump's doing. Because I always want to make sure we're at least making the points of multiple sides of a conversation. Even if I disagree with a certain point, we still got to make the point to make sure that everyone understands we are trying to look at this from every angle. Critics argue that defunding these institutions like NPR and PBS, it silences educational and cultural voices that serve communities that are not reached by for-profit media, such as smaller communities, smaller areas, people who may not be plugged into, I don't know exactly what they mean, not reached, because if you have access to the internet, you have a television, you can pretty much reach whatever media you want. But okay, let's just go along with what they're saying. That defunding these institutions is silencing educational and cultural voices. Now, there is an argument for that, and there's a legitimate argument for that. The reason there's a legitimate argument for that, because if you think someone is an educational voice or is a cultural voice, and you take their money away, then they can't reach the same audience, then technically you are correct. The challenge with this is that it really becomes an argument of somewhat of semantics, and also becomes a subjective argument, because what is educational and what is cultural? Who's the arbiter of what is quote unquote educational and what is cultural, and what kind of education are we talking? There's a lot of different types of education that could be gotten. All right, I could send my kid to some school where the teacher is saying, hey, a boy can become a girl and a girl can become a boy. Is that education? Technically, yes, it is. Now, do I agree with that education? No, I don't. So just because something is educational does not necessarily mean it's essential. Just because something is educational, if I was to take money away from it to basically cripple it from being shared, doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing something wrong. And this is the language game. All right, when I keep telling you all we're in an information war, this is one of the ways that I mean it, is that people can be very tricky with language in such a way that they can frame things to make it look good or bad just based on the way that they word it. And if you don't ask the questions to find out the context of what they are actually referring to in detail, then they can easily persuade you to think one way or think another way. And I just broke it down and explained it to you. So they said they're defunding they're silencing educational and cultural voices. Well, in some ways, that's okay. Again, if I don't agree with the concept of you saying that a boy can become a girl or a girl can become a boy, and that's something that you believe in culturally, and you believe that's good education for kids, and I believe that is not, I'm completely okay with silencing that quote unquote educational and cultural voice. But if you think it's a great thing, then you think it's terrible that I silence that educational and cultural voice. So again, I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong. What I'm saying is you got to be careful with the language games that people play. And if you can't parse what's not being said in these things, this is how you can be easily persuaded. Now, here's the thing about the Trump administration. This is the reason why Trump has the enemies that he has. There's a couple of reasons why. One, Donald Trump doesn't care about any of this. That breakdown that I just did, you would never hear Donald Trump do this. He doesn't have the mental makeup. He doesn't think like this. He doesn't talk like this. He doesn't care about anything that I just said. He will just let them talk shit and not care. I'm noticing it and I'm breaking it down. And his political enemies, the people on the other side of him, these people, even if you disagree with them, if you're a conservative, if you're MAGA, you're a Trump supporter, even if you completely disagree with some of the things that these people believe, one thing you cannot say is that these people are dumb. These people are actually very smart. The reason why they're able to get these points across about Trump and get them said over and over and over again and get millions of people to agree with them and believe them and be willing to argue about them. And I'm sure some people in my comments right now willing to argue about these very points against Trump is because they're smart enough to language things in such a way that is very influential and persuasive to other people who may not take the time to, again, parse what are they actually saying here and what are they not saying. Because based on the way that they frame this, again, educational and cultural voices, that can mean a whole lot of different things. But without the context, you don't know what it means. So they're leaving it up to interpretation. So on the surface, if somebody just came to me and said, I'll give you an example in a second. Someone came to me and said it was a pretty bad thing that Donald Trump's administration is silencing cultural voices, right? Somebody asked you that question. Isn't it pretty bad when the government decides to take money away from education? Isn't that a bad thing? Almost most people just on a regular everyday basis, if you ask that question, most people say yes. Yeah, it's a bad thing. Why would you take money away from education? You get money to education. That means the kids are going to get smarter and get better and learn more, right? Isn't that generally a good thing? And see, this is why you got to be careful, because they're really smart people who they frame things just like this to try to, again, this is where you get hoodwinked. This is the bamboozling that happens right here if you don't ask the right questions. I'll give you two examples. One is an example I told you before. It was actually a really good one and kind of funny. So I was in Miami, in Brickell, and I was sitting outside. This is before I was wearing a suit. So I'm in a white T-shirt and shorts. You can't sit outside in Miami in the middle of the day with a suit on. Not a good idea. But this woman came up to me. Actually, this man came up to me. He said, "Hey, we're doing these street interviews. Would you be interested in doing one?" You ever seen these street interview videos? So they do these in Miami all the time. So the guy asked me if I would do it, and I said, "Yeah." He seemed surprised that I said yes. So I get up there, and these people are talking about like social issues, like the economy and taxes and money and stuff like that. So the woman's first question was this. She said, "Sir, don't you think it's wrong that billionaires pay less in taxes than people like you and I paying taxes?" And the first thing I said back to her was, because I didn't know this woman, she didn't know me. I said to her, "How you know that I'm not a billionaire?" Because she framed the question as if she was assuming that I wasn't a billionaire, but she didn't know me. So again, this is just the way that I am. So any of you ever get to know me on a personal level, this is just how I am. And I said, "How you know I'm not a billionaire?" And then she pulled the mic back to herself. She said, "Are you a billionaire?" And I said, "No." And then she asked the question again. And because it was an assumptive question. But I just called her on that. And then she said, "Do you think that's okay?" And I said, "Yes, it is okay." And I said, "It is okay because the tax code in the United States of America is designed in such a way that if you are a billionaire and you have an accountant who knows how to operate the tax code, you can navigate through taxes in such a way that you pay as little in taxes as possible so you can keep more of your money instead of giving it to the federal government. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean a billionaire is doing something wrong. And these are the rules. It's not like they're violating the rules. They're breaking the rules. They should go to jail. If they're not breaking the rules and this is what they can get away with, then there's nothing wrong with that." Now, this woman, I don't know if she was white, but she was of a fair skin. Maybe she was Latin, maybe white and Latin mixed. But when I gave her this answer, and mind you, this is a street interview, so they ask you like 10 questions. They asked me all the questions, but after I answered that question, I could tell by the look on her face they were never going to run this interview. That interview never came out because I asked them what it was going to be on, like their Instagram or whatever. They say, "Yeah, we're going to post it." I knew that video wasn't ever going to come out because I was giving her the exact opposite answers of what they were looking for. They were looking for people who would say, "Yeah, that's a terrible thing," and they just wanted a black person to say it so they can get some white people to say it. They just wanted a mix of people all basically saying the same shit. I said the exact opposite of what she probably thought I was going to say. Now, why do I think that? Because I could tell by the look on her face that she was very uncomfortable when I answered that question. But it's not like they could say, "All right, we're going to cancel the interview. Thanks." They just asked me the rest of the questions. They deleted that video. I said, "That shit ain't coming out." But anyway, it was funny. I remember that day. I even said that on my Instagram story. That video is never coming out. Here's another example. So I'm giving you that to help you understand. People will frame things in such a way to make it seem like it's a slam dunk answer. But if you are actually a critical thinker and you look at these things, then you may give a different answer than what they're expecting. But they plan all this. They plan those questions out. They know exactly what answers they're expecting to get, and they ask you leading questions. That was a leading question. Don't you think it's a bad thing that billionaires pay less in taxes than the rest of them? That's a leading question. And she should have asked it in a more objective way if they wanted an objective answer. That's not what they were looking for. But anyway, another example is, I don't know if they do this where any of y'all live, but down here in South Florida, this happens all the time. You get these people who are like, I guess for lack of a better term, you call them solicitors. So they solicit, they just stand out in the street or they walk around in places where they know people are. So Brickell, Miami is a good place for this, or any type of like a farmer's market or some type of festival where people are just walking around. Or I'll even see them in the parking lots of Whole Foods. They'll be in places like this. And they usually have on these bright shirts, so you know who they are, like bright orange or bright yellow shirts. I see these people all the time. And they will just walk right up to you when you're getting in your car from the grocery store, or they'll walk up to you as soon as you walk out of the CVS or the Walgreens, or you'll be at a festival and they'll come up to you and try to talk to you. And they try to do something friendly to open up the conversation. Like they'll offer you a handshake, or they'll try to give you a fist bump, or they'll just say something stupid that you can generally politely reply back to them. Then they'll open up a conversation. And essentially what they're doing is trying to solicit, donations, or there's another word I'm looking for, like a charitable donation for something that you never even thought about. Like we want to give a free cow to a woman in Belize because they don't have money to farm or something like that. It'll be like giving cows to people in some country that's not even here. And basically they just talk you into it by asking you a bunch of leading questions along the way. And I've dealt with some of these people in the past. And the whole point that I'm bringing up that to share is that when a smart person frames things in the right way by asking the right questions and providing the right context to the question that they choose, they can lead you on whatever path that they want to. You want to see someone do this really well, just watch a lawyer at trial. They're really good at leading the witness where they want to go. And then the other lawyer will object and say, hey, you're leading the witness. That's their whole job, is to lead the witness. All right, this is what salespeople do. They lead the witness. So the critics who are against Donald Trump are selling you to be mad at Donald Trump by using this language that I just pointed out. So supporters of Trump, that is, they say that private media, such as people who are YouTubers and podcasters and streamers, etc., as opposed to public media like NPR and PBS, they are already providing content. They're already providing culture. They're already providing education, and they're doing it better. And they're doing it privately, which means they don't need to get federal money in order to do what they do. For example, I'm not receiving federal money to do what I do. If I do a live stream or I do a podcast or I have a YouTube channel talking about whatever I want to talk about, even if I'm educating kids, or you get Miss Rachel or Blippi or whoever else has a private content platform where they're educating kids, they don't need federal money. So why do we need to give federal money to these guys if people are already given an education and they're doing it privately? Why do we need to give money to NPR and PBS? This is an argument. So why do we need to give taxpayer dollars to fund these folks when there's already people out here doing it privately and doing it pretty well, they may add. Opponents say, here's the counter to that. They say that rural and underserved areas often rely on PBS and NPR for accessible and free information and children's programming. Is that a legitimate argument? Well, the answer is yes, it is. Just like the other one's a legitimate argument. There are private companies out there or private people on a YouTube or TikTok giving education to your kids, but they say people in rural areas, they rely on these public platforms for free information and children's programming, maybe so they don't have to go through the mental hassle of scrolling through YouTube and vetting everything you see on YouTube before you let your kids watch it. And as a parent, that is a legitimate argument. Like, hey, if I heard from somebody at the park, some parents say, hey, you should let your kid watch Mr. XYZ on YouTube. Well, you might need to watch Mr. XYZ yourself first, just to make sure whatever Mr. XYZ is saying is something that you want your kids to hear. Whereas opposed to if you turn on PBS and let your kids watch that, you already, you trust that there's nothing crazy going to be coming on PBS. But the problem is, again, by the framing of what happened at that hearing in DC a couple of weeks ago, we're not so sure anymore. That's where NPR and PBS went wrong. That is my opinion. They went wrong in this, in that they got exposed for it. And now the trust in them that they are giving kids completely objective, just straight up neutral stuff like Sesame Street back in the day. Do we still trust PBS and NPR to do that? And the answer is we're not sure. And just the question, there's not even, you don't have to answer the question yes or no. Just the fact that it's now a question. And what happened in that hearing the other week, 98% of your staff is leaning to the left, that undermined their credibility in such a way that they may not be able to get it back. Actually, they're not getting it back. Before the hearing, they already weren't getting it back because they might have went at Trump a little bit too hard. They might have went for some things socially that a lot of people don't agree with a little bit too hard. And again, these days, the way it works, people only have to take something that you did, quote unquote, wrong out of context, show the out of context piece to the rest of the world. If it goes viral, a lot of people are going to believe it and they're not going to get the full context. This can work for you the same way it can work against you. It's worked for Trump, it's worked against him. This applies to everybody, regardless of where you lean on any subject. This is the way it works. So you have to learn how to play this game. Most people are not going to get the full context of anything. They're going to go along with what they saw, what is persuasive and influential to them, and what triggers them in some way emotionally. And that's pretty much all they're going to go with. They're not going to get the full context. That applies to everybody. Most people are not getting the full context of anything. They're just going off of what they heard and what feels good to them. And if you don't learn how to play this game will be played against you. Okay, anything you say can and will be used against you. That's the way the internet works. That's the rule of the internet, folks. And if you didn't know, that's the rule. And you only had to be on the internet. You could be doing something in real life, but somebody pulls out their phone and films you. Anything you say can and will be used against you. So any of you didn't know that, that is the rule. So Trump supporters believe Government-funded media often leans to the left and lacks accountability to the public. How many of you agree with that? Put yes or no in the comments. Trump supporters, let me say it again, put yes or no in the comments if you agree with this. People who support Trump say government-funded media, NPR PBS, for example, they lean to the left and they lack accountability to the public. They lean to the left and they lack accountability to the public. Yes or no? What do y'all think? I see a couple of no's. 1, 2, I see about 3 no's and I see about 25 yeses. What do I think? Do I think public, let me, that question again. Government-funded media leans to the left and lacks accountability to the public. I would say yes. I would say they do. Crespo Realty, good morning over there. D Group, good morning. Over on Instagram, I would say that they do. I mean, if you just looked at general media, mainstream media that has a wide reach, that most of them lean more to the left than they do to the right. Just by listening to the things that they say and the way they talk about things and the frames that they present, they're usually leaning more to the left than they are leaning to the right. I think we can agree to that. And what is interesting is how the NPR and PBS people came to DC and tried to feign as if that's not the reality. They actually would have had more credibility. Donnie's SSC on Instagram. They would have had more credibility if they just said, yeah, we do happen to lean a little bit more to the left. Maybe we need to do something about that. Or maybe it happened. Maybe they could try to explain how and why it happened. I don't know. But I say most mainstream institutions lean more to the left than lean to the right. I mean, if you look around at colleges, for example, how many open Trump supporters do you think work at most colleges and universities? Unless it happens to be a staunchly conservative university, like they're openly conservative, like we're conservative and we're Christian and we got a bunch of conservatives coming here. But the average university in the United States of America, how many open, out in the open, I'm talking about walking around with the hat on and everything, Trump supporters do you think work at colleges and universities these days? Like, how many Trump supporters do you think work at any Ivy League school in America? Let's just say Ivy League. All right, everybody knows what those schools are. So many colleges. Let's take all the Ivy League schools in the United States. How many open Trump supporters do you think work there? I'm talking open. I'm not saying Trump supporters in the closet. Open, meaning they walk around on November. The election was November 5th, right? So November 6th, when Trump won, how many people you think were walking around with the Trump hat on who work at those universities? Actually, I mean, even students walking around. Might have had a few students, but what, professors, faculty, people in the decision-making group, how many people do you think actual Trump supporters walking around? Probably very close to none. And if someone came out as a Trump supporter, and I know some people who work as college professors, and here's what I say to them. And here's how you can tell if somebody's really standing, if somebody really is, let's just call it real or not. Here's what I say to a person who's a college professor. And you don't like Trump. Let's say you're not a fan of Trump. This is fine. If you're not a fan of Trump, you don't have to be a fan of Trump. But here's the question I would ask them. If you showed up tomorrow and all of a sudden you were a supporter of Trump, would you still have your job next year? If you showed up tomorrow to your job where you are known as not a supporter of Trump, you supported Kamala and Biden and Obama, and then tomorrow you showed up and you were a supporter of Trump. You changed your mind. Now you're a supporter of Trump. So now you got the Trump hat on, your MAGA and all those things. Would you still have your job next year? That's the question that I ask of them. None of them want to answer that question because they all know the answer is hell no, you wouldn't have your job. Even if you allegedly have tenure and you can't be fired and you got a job for life. Oh, you thought you had tenure. All right, until you had the wrong opinion. And let me explain to you what I mean by this. First of all, if you're a professor at a college, you're not there because of your political leaning. You're there because you're a good teacher, right? Isn't that the whole point of being a professor at a college? Because you're good at teaching. That's how you got the job, right? You keep the job because you're good at teaching history or math or calculus or whatever it is you talk about. Communications, poli-science, whatever. That's how you got the job. That's how you keep the job because you're really good at teaching your subject, not because of your political leaning. So if your political leaning was to the left and then your political leaning all of a sudden shifts to the right, that should have no effect on your ability to teach history or calculus or chemistry or poli-science, right? That should have no effect on it. So why would you, shifting your political leanings and your political beliefs, all of a sudden threaten your job status? It shouldn't threaten your job status because it shouldn't have anything to do with it, right? I mean, you got a job because you can teach. And this is the point, that a lot of mainstream platforms, you can't openly support Donald Trump and have a job. So what NPR and PBS should have said is what I just said. Yeah, we got a lot of left-leaning people here because to work at a place like this, if you're openly a supporter of Trump, you are going to get a whole bunch of backlash. You might not even get hired in the first place, and it ain't going to work. That's what they should have said, but they couldn't say that because then they would be exposing their bias, and then Trump would be fully vindicated in saying we're going to take these people's money away. If they actually told the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth of the situation. You can't just be a Trump supporter and go work at a liberal university where a lot of your colleagues are liberal and a lot of your quote unquote friends. How many friends would you have? You went from being liberal to being a Trump supporter between today and tomorrow. How many of your friends would still be your friends? Oh, they were never your friends in the first place. But they're your friends because they agree with you. If they're actually your friend, they can disagree with you and still be your friend. Oh, but they're not your friends anymore because you got an opinion that they disagree with. Oh, thought they were your friends. But again, so Trump supporters believe government-funded media often leans left and lacks accountability to the public. I would have to agree with this. I would have to agree with that. So detractors say removing funding is a political move designed to suppress dissenting political or critical coverage. Dissenters of Trump, they say when you take funding away from these platforms, you're trying to suppress dissenting or critical coverage. Now, is there an angle to that you could see that? Yes, I can see that. Donald Trump going after NPR and PBS might be because NPR and PBS went after Donald Trump. So he's basically hitting them back. They hit him, he's hitting them back. Could there be an angle to that? Yes, there could be an angle to that. Could they make that argument? Yes, they could. While at the same time, here's the counter argument to the argument that so many people have gone at Donald Trump with dissenting and critical coverage of him, whether it was accurate, fair, or not. They still did it. Why? Because it draws eyeballs. You got to remember when you're in media, your job is to draw eyeballs. Your job is not to tell the truth. Your job is to draw eyeballs. All right, that's the whole point. If you happen to draw eyeballs while telling the truth, great, but that's not the business. Business and media is getting attention. You get attention, you get eyeballs, you get clicks, you get eyeballs and clicks, you sell advertising, you make money. That's the business of media, in case any of you didn't know. Business of media is to have people looking at your platform so that you can run ads, and the people who run the ads pay money. For every one of these apps that I'm streaming on right now, the whole business model for them is to get you to be on the app for as long as possible. The longer you're on the app, the more they can show you ads. The more they can show you ads, and actually, the longer you're on the app, the more they know about you. The more they know about you, the more they can send you the right ads. The more they send you the right ads, the more likely you are to click on the ads. And whether you click on them or not, the advertiser has to pay to show their stuff to you. That's how they make their money. So these streaming apps actually like me. TikTok likes me, at least. I don't know about these other apps, but they like me because when I do these streams, if I do a good job, I can hold an audience for a certain amount of time. And the more time you spend on the app, the more they learn about you, what you like, what you're interested in, because they're listening to every single thing that I say. And the more they learn about what you're paying attention to, the better they can target advertising to you. And the better they can go to the advertiser and say, well, you should show an ad to this person because they like this type of stuff. And the advertiser is willing to spend more money because they're sending ads to a targeted list of people. That's the way media's business model works. All media, social media, traditional media, TV, PBS, whoever, everybody. That's how all of them work. So to say that this is it's dissenting or critical coverage against Trump, and that's why you're going at us. Well, every platform can say that about Trump because they all sent dissenting and critical coverage to Trump. Name a platform that didn't say anything dissenting or critical about Donald Trump, besides, I guess, Fox, and Newsmax. Who else didn't? They all did. So, I mean, they could all make that argument, but it falls on deaf ears because everybody can say it. So those in favor of Trump's move say this is a step towards smaller government and fiscal responsibility because it cuts non-essential spending. Generally, I agree with this point. I mean, that's the reason why Elon was brought in, is to basically lessen government overreach, which I'm a big fan of, lessening government overreach. The government's job is not to be in our business. Their job is to stay out of our business, protect our rights, not grant us rights, but protect our rights, defend our rights, and otherwise get out the way. That's the job of the government. So the more the government has its hands in, the less they're doing that. So to take money away from NPR and PBS and leave NPR and PBS to figure it out on their own, well, if NPR and PBS are any good, then they should be able to figure it out on their own. That's the way I look at it. Now, I understand there are counter arguments to that, very strong counter arguments to that. But if you're any good, you should be able to figure it out in the open marketplace. All right, y'all got to understand, I'm an entrepreneur. All right, my background is in sports. And in those places, you got to figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, you get left by the side of the road to die. And you get eaten by the vultures. All right, that's the way it works in the worlds that I come from. Many of you are not from those worlds. That's the world that I'm from. And I'm the speaker here. So this is where I'm telling you how I see it. So NPR and PBS should be able to make it happen on their own. The same way that if someone works for some big conglomerate and they get fired, if you're any good, you should be able to start your own platform and still be good. And you should still be able to generate an audience and do your thing. Look at somebody like, example I've used, Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly, 2 examples. Both of them were at major platforms, Daily Wire for Candace and at NBC, Fox for Megyn Kelly. Both of them ended up out on the outside looking in, got fired. I think both of them got fired. And now they both have their own platforms and they're both thriving on their own platforms. Why? Because they're good. Again, I'm not saying you need to agree with their opinions. What I'm saying is the reason that they are both able to thrive outside of the machine is because they're both good. If you can't thrive outside of the machine, then that means you were never good in the first place. Period. If you can't thrive, if you were in the machine doing good, then you get out of the machine and you fall flat on your face because you were never good. Period. NPR and PBS, again, it's not all of their money that's coming from the federal government. I mean, it's less than the majority of their money. The majority of their money is not coming from the federal government. They should have no problem figuring it out. Why? Because you're good. If you're good, y'all should be able to figure it out. Get money from somebody. All right, there are private donors who give money. I mean, Kamala Harris raised $1 billion in 100 days? Okay, so she can raise $1 billion in 100 days with no substance. What can you do with all your substance, NPR and PBS? I mean that's a pretty good argument, no? Some of you don't agree, some of you do. Anyway, those against it say the actual cost to taxpayers is minimal. The amount of taxpayers that taxpayers give to these companies is minimal compared to the cultural and educational value PBS and NPR provide. Okay, I actually agree with that. That the amount of money that taxpayers pay for PBS and NPR is not that much compared to the value that they bring in exchange. I actually agree with that. However, if the government says we're going to pull that federal funding so we could put that money towards something else because we don't need to give the money to you, just because it's a little bit of money doesn't mean that I need to give it to you. It's kind of like if you are walking down the street and some bum asks you for $3. All right, $3 might not be nothing to you. $3 can be nothing to you. Maybe you make $500,000 a year. So $3 is very little to you. That doesn't mean you're obligated to give the guy $3, does it? No. Just because you have it does not mean someone else is obligated to receive it from you. So just because the amount of money that we pay as taxpayers that goes to NPR and PBS is a small amount doesn't mean that you're entitled to it. All right, the same way that when the sports team in town says you want to build a new stadium, and the way we'll build a stadium is we're going to put a 1 cent tax on every purchase made in town for the next 20 years. And they say to you, hey, it's only 1 cent. Every time you buy something, it's just going to be 1 extra penny to your bill. So instead of $55.20 when you buy groceries, it's going to be $55.21. That's nothing. It's 1 penny. How could you be mad at 1 penny? Just because it's only 1 penny does not mean I have to say yes to it. So this argument is a legitimate argument, but it's also an illegitimate argument at the same time. So some will argue that the move will encourage innovation and force NPR, PBS, and others to adapt to the open market just like every other media outlet. Did I not? I just said that, right? So I already told you that if you're any good, you should be able to go into the open marketplace and prove it, period. Again, I'm an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, if you can't prove in the open marketplace, you fail. I'm an athlete. In the athletic world, you get on the field of the court, you get your chance, and you suck when you get on the field of the court, you can't say shit. All right, you got your chance. All right, you sucked. All right, what you going to say? Nothing you can say. These are worlds that I operate in with no safety net. All right, either you can play or you can't. And if you can't play, you sit on the bench. And if you ain't good enough to sit on the bench, you sit in the bleachers. All right, that's the way it works. So others argue that these platforms were never meant to be commercial. They exist specifically to serve the public interest over profit. This is a very solid argument. There's no counter to this generally. Let me think about that. Some say the NPR and PBS were designed as public services. They are not supposed to be for profit. They're not supposed to be in the private sector. Therefore, the government should keep giving them money because that's why they exist, to be a public service, not somebody going out and competing in the open marketplace. This is a very strong argument. My response to that argument is that as soon as you, as a public service, start taking a side, you are no longer doing a public service. That's my pushback. So if I was Trump's press secretary, if I was the Carolyn Levitt, all right, so let's say they got her, they got the white girl, they say they have a black guy, is that he will give the same message, but in a different way. That's what I would say. That as soon as you start picking a side in terms of news coverage, and it looks like you all have picked a side, whether you did it on purpose or it just happened naturally, y'all picked a side. As soon as you pick a side, you're not doing a public service. Now you are playing a partisan game. You are doing what you want to do, and you can do what you want to do when you're an entrepreneur. When you are your own business, you can do whatever you want to do. Private businesses make private decisions. You're a public business. You got to do things in the public. And if you're not serving the public by being fair and balanced, because most of your staff is leaning one way or not another, y'all ain't public anymore. Y'all are doing what you want to do. Okay, do what you want to do. Just get the hell out of here. Stop taking our money. You want to do what you want to do. And this pretty much been Trump's message. If you're taking federal money from us, you can't do what you want to do while taking our money. If you want to do what you want to do, cool. We're just taking our money away. Now, if you're going to listen to what we say, now we'll give you the money. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a fair offer as far as I'm concerned. When all y'all were kids and you were living with your parents, most of you, I think you heard that from your parents. They said, okay, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do as soon as you move out and you pay your own bills. All right, as long as you're living under my roof in my house, eating food that I pay for, and I'm paying the bills, you're going to do what I said. All right, did most of your parents talk like that? Yes or no, or is that just me? But yes or no in the comments if your parents talk to you like that. Maybe they didn't say it in so many words, but y'all get the point. Did your parents talk to you like that? Okay, I'm not the only one. All right, so as long as you're living under this roof, this is the way it works. So this is what Trump is saying. You're under my roof because I'm giving you my money. And when I say my, I mean the federal government money. Okay, so then, hey, y'all don't want to do what we say, then that's it. Go do what you want to do. But not over here. So what backers say is that NPR and PBS have outlived backers of Trump. They say they've outlived their usefulness in the internet age when independent content thrives. We already kind of talked about that. And I generally agree with that. If NPR and PBS went away tomorrow, I think people would adjust and figure it out. And people in areas that, again, people talk about smaller areas. And maybe, I guess, in places where people don't go to the internet as much and they just turn on the TV. Maybe just going to the internet is not a thing for them. They just go to the TV and they turn on PBS because they know they can trust it. I get it. And maybe you got to deal with some short-term pain for a long-term gain. Isn't that what Trump said? Short-term pain for a long-term gain. Understand that everything has a cost, folks. And the cost of getting rid of them is that some people might have to adjust to the situation. This is pretty much how it works. This works everywhere in life. Sometimes things change underneath your feet. The ground shifts and you got to shift with it. And if you don't shift, you get shifted. That's the way it works. That's the game. So critics of Trump say legacy media like NPR and PBS, they still provide investigative journalism and unbiased news, especially during crises. Now, here's where I will give them, this is probably the strongest point I would give for them, is that PBS has this, I guess, this subsidiary, I guess they call it, whatever they call it, called Frontline, PBS Frontline. And they put a lot of videos on YouTube. So if y'all look them up, let me see if I can find PBS Frontline. They actually put out good content. So PBS Frontline, I don't know if this is just under the PBS banner or if they just have a channel called Frontline PBS. So is this one right here, Frontline PBS on YouTube. They actually make really good content. So they have 3 million subscribers and 1,000 videos on Frontline PBS on YouTube. And these are actually, they're like documentaries. So the documentaries will be like 1 to 2 hours. They talk about all different types of things. So I'll just read off some of the things they got on here. So this one I already listened to. Most of you can listen to them. You don't really have to look at the screen. I don't really look at YouTube, but I can listen to it. United States of Secrets, Part 1. So it talks about just government stuff that people claim are secrets. Shattered Dreams of Peace. And they talk about the I country and the P country after Oslo. There's a documentary on that. Didn't see that one yet. The Rise of ISIS. They talk about that. Endgame. I don't know what this is about. America and the Taliban. They talk about that. How Elon Musk turned Twitter into X. Inside a Hate Network. The Fall of Telegram. I don't even know what that is. Spying on the Home Front. America and the Taliban. Mr. P. I gotta be careful saying names. His Crisis. The guy in our country. Clarence and Jenny Thomas. They talk about that. Left Behind America. Rust Belt Cities Economic Struggle and Left Behind America. So they make a whole bunch of these videos and documentaries. These are actually very good. So as long as they can keep doing this, I'm cool with them losing their money. Now, if losing their money means they're going to stop doing that, I would be disappointed, but I wouldn't be destroyed. I would replace it with something else. But I do like those. So Frontline PBS, that channel is actually very good. So any of you just want to get a somewhat of a deep dive on certain subjects and maybe you heard of, but you don't quite know what happened, they do a good job of just telling you what happened. Now, you still got to draw your own conclusions, but they actually do a good job. So I will give them that positive point. So they say they're providing investigative journalism, which they do. Okay, I will give them that. And unbiased news. I don't know about that one. All right. Everybody stopped doing unbiased news when Trump came into office. Everybody stopped doing unbiased news at that point. It was very difficult to find somebody being unbiased when Trump was the subject. Now, supporters frame it as returning media responsibility to the people and not to the states. That I'm fine with. And this has been Trump's whole thing. So whether you agree with this or not, you can't say that Trump is being disingenuous. Trump's been very clear about what he's been about from the beginning. So again, there are people who are listening to me right now who you may disagree with Trump and disagree with what he's doing, but nobody can say that he flipped on you. There's no one listening to this, whether you voted for Trump or you voted against Trump, or you're a supporter or you're a detractor. Nobody can say that the guy flipped on you. Everything he said he was going to do, he's either done it, doing it, or trying to do it. It's not like he said one thing and did another. Not like no Barack Obama. He actually said, this is what I'm going to do, and then he did it. And that's what he's doing. He said, we want to make the government smaller. We want to give the power back to the states. He did this exactly during the virus. Instead of saying federally, we're going to make you do something and put a federal rule on everybody, he said, no, I'm going to let every state decide what to do. And luckily for me, I live in the state of Florida, where Governor DeSantis, who was doing a great job at the time, he said, we are going to relax these restrictions and we're not going to make people shelter in place and we're not going to make you put a mask on your face. They did it for a little while. I got a citation for walking around without a mask once, but I ain't going to tell you what I did, but I didn't pay the citation. Let's just say that. But they did a little bit of the nonsense at the beginning, but then Florida opened up pretty quickly. That's why a lot of people fled places like New York and California and came here to Florida, because each state got to set its own rules. So any of you who lived in a staunchly blue state, I'm sorry for you, but you decided to live there, not me. But anyway, Trump's whole thing was, we don't want the federal government making so many decisions for people's everyday lives. We want to take it away from the federal government and let each state decide what they want to do. Same thing he did when it came to abortion. All right, we're not going to have the federal government decide that. We're not going to codify this, or they took it away to codification. And now we're going to let every state decide what to do, which I believe gives the people much more power than having the federal government just say, this is the rule that everyone has to abide by. So that's what supporters are saying, and that's true. Again, you don't have to agree with it, but the point itself is a true point, whether you agree with it or not. Opponents view this as censorship by budget, defunding what they can't control. Well, let me think on that one. Opponents of Trump's move say this is censorship by budget. In other words, he's taking money away from someone simply because he doesn't like what they're saying or what they're doing. And let's just say that frame was true. Let's just say that Trump really didn't like NPR and PBS. Let's say he hated them, right? Like if it was the New York Times, he just hates them, so he's going to take their money away. And they say this is censorship by budget. My response to that is, so what? So what? I'm the president. I was elected by the people to make decisions. And I decided I don't like you. And you're getting money that I have access to or control over. And since I don't like you, I'm going to take the money away. So what's wrong with that? What's the pushback to that? Why is that a bad thing? If I'm the president, I was elected to make decisions. Y'all chose me to make decisions. So I was chosen to make decisions. The decision that I made is that I'm going to pull your money away because I don't like you. So what? What's wrong with it? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm thinking through it while I'm talking to you all, but there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it ain't like Trump just came out of nowhere and just did this out of nowhere. He was elected to make decisions. This is one of his decisions. Again, whether you agree with it or not, you can't say that he doesn't have the right to do it because this is his choice. He's the president. We chose him. Whether you voted for him or not, you still chose him. If you voted for Kamala, you still chose Trump because he won. And a democratic election process is majority rules. He won. And he clearly won. So if he's defunding something because he can't control it or he doesn't like it, he has every right to. And we gave him that right on November 5th, 2024. Trump's base sees this as a cultural win against what they consider to be elite left-wing media institutions. Well, that one, we ain't even got to argue. That one is very true. Anybody who's a Trump supporter or is MAGA is happy about this because you see these platforms as elite left-wing media institutions. And that hearing that they had a couple weeks ago did not help them dispel this framing. They are under that frame and they can't get it off. They got that juice dripping off them. They can't get it off because they got exposed, and it's not a damn thing the woman could say about it because it was true. We got all these leftists working here, nobody on the right working here. How are you going to say that you're unbiased? It's very difficult to do that in the world that we're in today, in this climate, when everyone has an opinion on Trump, and you got all these leftists working here, nobody on the right working there, but you're coming here trying to say that you're unbiased. It doesn't look good. Now, that does not mean, let me be clear about something. Just because someone is they lean politically to the left, or let's say you voted Democrat and you voted for Obama, Hillary, Biden, and Kamala. That does not mean that you cannot be objective about Donald Trump. And if you're a Trump supporter, that does not mean you can't be objective about Kamala, Biden, Obama, and Hillary. Doesn't mean you can't be objective just because you voted for somebody. All right, you can be. Now, we don't know who is and who isn't just based on that alone. Doesn't mean that they're not. But if the optics of your organization is a whole bunch of people on the left work there and you don't have anybody on the right working there, what does that look like? Optically, it doesn't look good. That's not a good look. You can't show up somewhere and say, hey, we are unbiased and we're balanced. And then we look at your staff and everybody who works there is on the left. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And again, doesn't mean a whole bunch of people who work on the left can't talk objectively about the president. Doesn't mean necessarily that that's the case. But does it look right? It doesn't look right. It's like if I said, hey, I got a team of 20 people working for me and we are all unbalanced and unbiased when it comes to politics. And then you look at my staff and everybody's a MAGA supporter. Now, do you believe that we're actually talking about things in an objective and unbiased way? No, because it doesn't look right. Same thing that if you're talking about global warming, you probably don't want to do so in the middle of a snowstorm. It doesn't look right. Even though global warming is not about necessarily a cold day or a hot day. That's not really what it's about, but it doesn't look right. If I'm going to give a speech about global warming, I'm going to do it on a day like today in Miami where it's 87 degrees outside and it's super humid and everybody is sweating just from standing outside. You start sweating. That's a good time to talk about global warming because the word warming makes you think about heat. So if I'm giving a speech about warming and it's cold outside and it's snowing around me, then it doesn't make sense to the subconscious mind. And that's the problem that the NPR and the PBS organizations have is that those of you, again, you understand the concept of global warming, you know that's not really what it's about. Like it's not going to snow ever again or it's going to be hot every day. That's not really what it means. But you also understand that most people understand things on a very basic level and they don't take the time to go into depth on things. So you probably want to make your optics match your words. Does that make sense? It's kind of like every day when I'm doing these lives, somebody asks me if I'm a lawyer. Reason people ask me if I'm a lawyer because I'm dressed like what you expect a lawyer to look like. If I was in a white t-shirt and a snapback hat, you wouldn't ask me if I was a lawyer, even if I was saying the exact same things. Why? Because optically it doesn't match. It doesn't match your expectation. So that's the problem with NPR and PBS. All right. So the other side, Trump's attackers, the last point that I'll make here, they view this as an attack on education, arts, and civil discourse, and it's going to hurt the next generation more than it hurts the current one. I say to this, bullshit. No, that's a bullshit argument. I understand why they believe it. Because again, the way you frame things, you can frame it in such a way that anybody can agree with it just based on the language that you use. So this is a good argument. If I was, let's say, for example, I was called in to consult Trump's opponents on how to argue about in defense of NPR and PBS, this would be a very good point. I would say this is a good point. Use this one. Now, why would I say use it when I just called it bullshit? I'm going to tell you why. I would tell them to use this even though I just called it bullshit because what I just told you. Most people are not critical thinkers. They're not going to go into depth as to what you say. They're going to take what you say on its surface. And if you word it eloquently, it will be very convincing and persuasive to a large group of people. That's all this is. It's very eloquently worded attack on Trump by saying that you are attacking education, you're attacking arts, and you're attacking civil discourse by defunding these public platforms that have been around for a long time. And they are informing and educating a whole lot of people. And it's going to hurt the next generation of people more than it hurts the current generation of people. That is a very, very strong argument against what Donald Trump is doing that will be very convincing to a certain group of people. It's a very good argument, even though I disagree with it. I can't say it's a bad argument. And y'all got to understand the detail there. You can disagree with an argument while still giving it credit for being actually a good point. And this is a good point, but it's a bad argument in general because I'm a critical thinker and I notice the nonsense. So they give me this captcha. Which one of these carries cargo? They got these new kind of captchas on. What the hell is this? I can't even tell what this is. They got these new captchas on TikTok. It says, which of these is worn on the head? And they got this like sci-fi looking art picture. And I can't even tell what the hell these things are. And I just got one wrong because I couldn't tell what it was. Which of these objects bounces on court? So it's basketballs, but it's like in this sci-fi picture. And you got to kind of look into it to make sure you see all the items and you click on it and then you get in. All right, so I finally figured out the captcha. So now they got these new captchas now. I think AI has figured out captchas, people getting around it. All that said, folks, let's get into the discussion, the open discussion on this subject of Trump defunding NPR and PBS. But before we do that, I do need to run to the restroom. So let me take a quick bathroom break. It's going to take me 90 seconds. What should I play here? I'm going to let you all listen to one of the latest episodes of my show called Work on Your Game. Comes out every single day on Apple, Spotify, all your favorite podcast platforms. And the topic here today is why people use I got it on 2xp and put on 1x. Why people use logical fallacies is the topic. This is episode number is this? Episode number 3723. Things that happen. Then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights. 90 seconds, I'll be right back, and then we'll get to the game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Welcome to the show. And today's topic is we are on part 2 of our ongoing, now concluding mini series on why people use logical fallacies. So I gave you the background on this yesterday. I also gave you a 4-part series on the actual fallacies themselves, starting at episode number 3110. So if you have not referenced those, then you know what to do. Work on Your Game, podcast.com is where you can see a conclusive list of every episode in the history of the show. If you can't see any particular episode scrolling backwards in your feed on Apple or Spotify, in my experience, from what I've seen, they tend to only load the last 300 to 500 episodes. And being that we have over 3,000 episodes of this show, any episode that you cannot find there, you can just go to workonyourgamepodcast.com. That link should also be down in the description to this episode. So let's pick it up right here at point number 4. Topic again, why people use logical fallacies. Number 4, logical fallacies take conversations that are about topic A, B, C and turn them into a conversation about topic X, Y, Z. Now, why would anybody want to do that? Well, there are several reasons people want to do it. As a matter of fact, in yesterday's episode, I was referencing Kamala Harris and Donald Trump debating. All right, so here we go. Let's get into the comments here. Fishing Weekend Warrior over on YouTube. I'm going to do YouTube, then Instagram, then TikTok. So Fishing Weekend Warrior said they are biased and the rural argument is just a way for leftists to reach rural areas. Okay, that's a fair enough point. The leftists just want to reach the rural areas. So that's why they put things out that way. Okay, I didn't think of that, but that's a fair enough argument. I understand what you're saying there. Over on Instagram, I don't know if I saw anything. Donnie said, what's your main goal, as in where do you see yourself in this? Well, that's what I just spent the last hour explaining. Let's see. Donnie says, our version of PBS won an election for a liberal party in Canada. They use Trump as a threat. It makes sense. We have news censorship in Canada from social platforms. That sucks for Canada. I would not live in Canada. Shout out to Canada. It's too cold in Canada on top of that. All right, so let's see what we got over on TikTok. I'm scrolling up as far back as I can, so I'm just picking up from where I can see. Reciprocal Terror said PBS and NPR are left-wing propaganda arms of the Democrat Party. They do not bring much value. Well, there you go. I ain't got to add nothing to that, but there are people who believe that, yes. Nina Horn said Harris blew that money suspiciously. Well, she did blow the money. Now, how? I don't know. That's the question. Jenna Neal said, don't all the ads say privately funded through donations? Which ads are you talking about? Blueprint T said obligated is different from giving. Well, not necessarily. You could feel obligated to give, but I get what you're saying. The person with a flower as their name said, you are not a Christian with those beliefs. When did I ever tell you I was a Christian? Mike said, we're going to spend $300 million so Trump can golf. SMH. Well, all presidents golf. Well, except Biden. I don't think he can golf anymore, but all presidents golf. It's only Trump gets all the attention for golfing. Jenna said the baseball and football stadiums taxpayer funded drives me nuts. Well, they do a good job of selling you on the concept because they say you should fund a new stadium for the football or the baseball team because, number one, it's going to bring a whole bunch of money to the area because there's a whole bunch of businesses that pop up because we have a stadium, and a whole bunch of jobs are going to exist because of that stadium. And a whole bunch of people are going to come around because of the stadium. So everybody's going to get to participate in making money because we have this stadium. So if y'all put some money up and we build the stadium, all of these benefits to the local economy will happen on top of the fact that you still have a sports team. Now, if we leave, everything that all the benefits that come from us having a stadium here go away. So there's a trade-off to it. At the same time, I understand why people say, hey, how did these guys got $1 billion entity, but they want us to pay for the stadium? And why can't they pay for their own stadium? Well, the answer why they don't pay for their own stadium is OPM. This is what every business person, entrepreneur understands. It's called other people's money. If you can spend other people's money, you always spend other people's money before you spend your own money. This is the reason why Donald Trump is noted as a billionaire, but he wasn't spending his own $1 billion to run his own campaign. That money Trump took for his campaign, those were donations. He didn't spend his money. He spent somebody else's money. So in business, you always want to spend other people's money. So even a billionaire, this is the reason why billionaires want other people to pay for their stadium when they clearly can afford it, because why spend my money when I can spend your money? And I agree with that. So, Jenna, I understand what you're saying, though. I understand why people get annoyed by that. Like, wait a minute, why am I paying for this when you got all this money, allegedly? So anyway, Blueprint says doesn't mean you have to say no either. I don't know what you're referring to. DeAndy said your argument is absurd. Some say my arguments are absurd. I don't know which argument you're pushing back against, though. I need context. So when y'all leave these comments, you got to tell me exactly what you're talking about, because by the time I read your comment, I'm already past the point that you were responding to. Living Room Gamer said, nah, you have contracts in sports. What are you responding to? I don't know what you're pushing back against. Blueprint T said, that's false. Mediocre athletes make leagues every day. Blueprint T, that is not true. I played professional sports for almost 10 years. Mediocre, relatively speaking, meaning mediocre compared to the other pros. Maybe compared to the other pros. If you're a part of the 1%, then maybe you could be mediocre amongst them and make the team. But if you're mediocre compared to the average person, you ain't making no pro team. So I don't know what you're referring to there. Andy said the local affiliates and local programming are what's going to be harmed, not the national organization. Yeah, I know. I said that. Did you hear me when I said that? Mike said PBS and NPR are like libraries and art museums. Yes, libraries and art museums are good things. I'm assuming that's what you're saying. But there are alternatives. David says, nope, they're biased. I don't want my money going to them. So see, there's arguments on both sides of this conversation. Susie McHenry McDonough said, I totally agree. Well, thank you, Susie. Richard Ferry says, where does all the money from the Sesame Street merch go? Are you asking the wrong person? I wish it was going to me. They probably sell a lot of merch. Let's see. CC Ruiz said, thank you for a good morning. Got to go. Thank you, CC. Thank you for the roses. Let's see. Liz said many times. Your parents told you that? Mike said, I guess PBS should show Hee Haw to appeal to Trumpers. I get it. He made a little joke. This Ain't Xanto said, what does PBS stand for? I believe it's Public Broadcasting Service, last I checked. Taryn said, yep, and that's what I tell my kids. Yes, that's what I'll tell my kids too when they're old enough to understand it. Marthug's Vanity said, where does PBS and NPR fit into what you're saying? I just spent the last hour explaining it. What were you listening to? B said, PBS was staffed by almost exclusively all registered Democrats and were heavily left-leaning. Yes, I said that. Mike said, PBS could show Dumb and Dumber to appeal to Trumpers. All right, Mike, we get it. All right, we got it. All right, what else you got, Mike? All right. Liz said, parents, get your kids outside to play. Yes, I agree with that. While at the same time, it's not as easy these days to just send your kids outside and not worry about what they're doing. Back in the day, the 80s and the 90s, parents could send their kids outside and you ain't have to like watch them and see what the hell was going on. Because you knew your neighbors, you could trust everybody in the neighborhood and nothing crazy was happening. Nowadays, I don't know if I could send my kid outside and just say, go play. And I could just sit here and do this stream while not thinking about what my kid's doing or who he's with or who's around. The world is different now. I agree with your general point. And there's a different way you got to do it now. That's what I'm saying. You just said unbiased news, LOL. We said nothing unbiased about them. Well, yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. Lils said they have a lot of content. Well, yes, they do. Traditional said, I love Frontline. Lil said PBS. Yeah, PBS Frontline. I love their shows. They actually make good content. That's one of the best points I could give in their defense. If that has anything to do with it, which I doubt it does. It doesn't have anything to do with their defunding. They can still do that without the funding. Hopefully. They should, because it's one of their strongest verticals. At least I hope it is. Marthug said, I work at a daycare. We still turn on PBS during snack time for our students. Yes, exactly. That part I get, because you can turn it on and you can at least trust, or I know they're going to have something wholesome. Whereas if you turn on YouTube, you got to vet whatever's coming on YouTube. You have no idea what somebody's putting on YouTube, because anybody can say anything on YouTube. On top of the fact you got advertisements running, you don't know what the ads are saying, and your kids are sitting there watching that. You got to vet all of that stuff. So now you got to do extra work if you're going to default to YouTube as opposed to going to something that's publicly funded, and you pretty much got a solid idea of what they're going to do. I understand that argument. Stubbalicious said, why is Trump taking it away? Well, I mean, pretty much he doesn't like them. I think that's a good enough reason. We voted for him. So, I mean, he doesn't like them. Martin Haynes said, wouldn't it be partisan for one wing to impose an ideological-based funding? Sounds more partisan. Well, I mean, every politician is partisan. I mean, what do you want them to do? Well, except Bernie Sanders. Allegedly, he's an independent. But Donald Trump is on the Republican side. So, I mean, what do you expect? What do you expect Biden to do? What do you think Obama was going to do? Stubbornlicious said, I thought they were biased, but what you said doesn't seem. Well, there's arguments on both sides, Stubbornlicious. It's not that I generally think that they are biased. What I say is the optics don't look good. I mean, I don't watch PBS and I do not listen to NPR. But the optics don't look good when they appeared at that hearing a few weeks ago. So they kind of made themselves look bad, and there's not really anything they could do to avoid it. They basically got checkmated. That's the way I would explain it. Lily Rose said, news has been biased for decades. Yes, news is always biased. It doesn't matter which one we like. That's all news is. You pick the one you like. Lily Rose says, 6 people own 96% of world media companies. Think about that. Okay, I just thought about it. Now what? Lily said, Fox and CNN are owned by the same person. Okay. Lils said, why bring up Obama? Because all you know who he is. I'm using him as a frame of reference. That's why I brought him up. Same reason I brought up Bush, Clinton, Kamala, Hillary, Biden, and Trump. Because all you know who they are. Liz said AOC went to Florida. Yes, she did. AOC was telling y'all to wear masks and stay in the house, and then she was in Florida. And it's wear masks and stay in the house in New York, right? Because that's where she's from, New York. But then she was in Florida vacationing with her boyfriend, husband, whoever that guy is. Rosie said, California is still horrible to live in. That's what I've heard, Rosie, but there's still a lot of people over there. I know a lot of people in California. Some of them claiming that they're going to get out, but they're still there. Stubbornlicious said, when I go to cities in Ohio, they're still wearing masks. I still see people every now and then wearing a mask, even down here in South Florida. They look weird, but hey, it's your face. Do what you want to do. Maybe they should wear a mask. It might be better for the rest of us. Stubbornlicious said, they call for fundraising multiple times. Who are you talking about? PBS and NPR? Martha's Vanity said, that's dangerous thinking. I don't know what you're referring to. SRQBT said he was elected by less than 1/3 of our country. L take. Who are you talking about? Donald Trump? He was elected by the whole country. He was elected by 100% of the country. SRQBT. What do you mean? Less than 1/3? I know what you mean. You're splitting hairs. But is that really what we're doing here? I mean, is this middle school? You get the point. He was elected by the whole country because we only get one outcome. And based on the people who voted, he won. Lils said, I hope they keep Sesame Street. Me too. At least they got the archives. All right. Even if they get rid of Sesame Street, the archives are enough. By the time your kid watches all the archives, they'll be too old for Sesame Street. So I think they got enough material in the bank. Chucky said, money was appropriated by Congress. What do you mean? David Paul said, NPR is biased. I don't want my money going to a biased organization. Yeah, many people agree with you. I do like listening to them, but they don't need my money. No, I would agree with that. Martha said, dictatorship much. What do you mean? How is it dictatorship? I don't think it's a dictatorship. Diego G. Photo said, I don't like you, so let me take you to court just because. Yes, Diego, 2024 called and said, see what happened to Donald Trump. So it's a good point that you made. I don't know what side you're making it for. SRQ said, boy, with this take, I'd never vote for you. Stay out of politics. I'm not getting into politics. And even if I didn't get your vote, doesn't mean I couldn't still win. You're only one person. Yorkie said, it's not even about liking them. They have been wasting too much money. Okay, that's another argument. Fielding said, you would have loved serving in the big house. Are you disagreeing with something that I said? Tell me what you disagree with. Don't be passive aggressive. Travis said, left wing because they don't lie. What does that mean? Tegan Zina said, any college history class will teach you we are a republic, which means smaller government, less funds. Okay, fine if that's the way you see it. I don't know why you brought up college history classes. That's not a good, I wouldn't say that as a good backing for your point. If you just said it without any college history class, because just because something gets taught in a class in school does not mean that it's true. Very much. Marthug said, so no one can oppose Trump. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause for Marthug's Vanity for the straw man question of the day. I was waiting for it. So straw man question of the day usually starts with the word so. So no one can oppose Trump. Did I say that? I don't think so. That's a straw man. When you take something that I said, you rephrase it into something that I didn't say, then you pose it as if you're repeating what I said and then asking me to respond to it. That is the classic straw man fallacy. Marthug's Vanity, great job. Congratulations. One day we're going to get a prize. I think I'm going to get somebody to sponsor that. We need a Straw man question of the day, sponsored by like Hertz, or who could sponsor it? Sponsored by Instagram or something like that. I need somebody to sponsor the straw man question of the day, because every day somebody asks me a straw man question, and we need to do something like give out a prize or have it sponsored by somebody. Who would sponsor the straw man question of the day? Maybe like straw man question of the day sponsored by Chat GPT or something like that. Let me think about that. Emmy, good morning. Stubbalicious said a lot of right wing people agree with left Tibbs. I don't know what you're saying there. Popular vote times one. Wifey tips daily. Thank you. Wills with the number 2 straw man of the day said, so should people be open about their politics at work? Actually, that's not a straw man. I'm not going to call that a straw man. You said it a little bit differently. Should people be open about their politics at work? I would say case by case basis. It depends on where you work and what your politics are, and you need to read the room. That's what I would say, Wills. Read the room. There are some rooms where you probably should keep your politics to yourself. One of the reasons why I am an entrepreneur and I don't work a traditional job is because I have this problem of sharing my opinion. I like to tell people what I think, and I like to tell people what I think about them. And in certain environments, that's not a good idea if you want to keep your job. In the places that many of you work, somebody with my habits would not last long. Even if I was good at the job, I wouldn't be able to build a career because I would get fired, because I would offer my opinion to the wrong person at the wrong time and in the wrong way. And I would be out of there. Even if I could be the best worker there, but I would lose my job because I didn't know how to stay quiet. So, Wills, I would say read the room. If you're in a room where you're not quite sure, I say stay quiet until you're sure. Ronnie said, but yet there are no black people in his cabinet. So a lot of people made that point around the time that he named his cabinet members. My question is, why does it matter if there are black people in his cabinet? What does that do for you? What does that prove? And how does that help black people? Let's just say he had whatever number of people in his cabinet. Let's say they were all black. What does that do for you? How does that change anything? Let's say everybody in his cabinet was black and they were doing the exact same things they're doing now. What difference does that make? So this is, first of all, identity politics, which I'm not a fan of. Secondly, it's racial idolization by black people. A lot of black people said this, what you just said when he first named his cabinet. Oh, where the black people at? What you need? What's the difference? Whether they're black or not. Who was in Barack Obama's cabinet? Did he have some black people? Okay, what did that do for black people? What did Barack Obama do for black people? He had black people in his cabinet. He's black. What did he do? A lot of black people said Barack Obama did nothing for black people. Yet he had black people in his cabinet. So why is Trump not having black people in his cabinet a thing? What difference does it make? That's the question that I'm asking. If somebody has an answer, please post in the comments. When I get down to the bottom, I'll see them. Just put Obama cabinet in your comments so I know what you're referring to. By the time I get there, I'm going to have forgot about this. Judge by One said the president is making financial decisions for America where most of his businesses are. Doesn't mean he's doing anything wrong. My business is in America, and if I was president, I'd make decisions for America too. Just because I have business here doesn't mean I can't make decisions. Let's say like when it snowed in Florida. Well, maybe up in the northern part of Florida, it might snow every once in a while. Tegan said optics match your words. Yes, exactly. DB8 said NPR and PBS are left-leaning, but that's because they're educated. Now, DBH, I don't know if this is if you're being sarcastic or you're being serious. I'll respond to it as if you're being serious. So DBH, first of all, you use the wrong form of the word there. It should be THEY''RE. They are. That's the contraction. They are. You use their THEIR as if the possessive form of there, but then you're talking about they're educated, but you're using the wrong form of there. So again, that's why I'm assuming you're being sarcastic. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that's a sarcastic comment. But the other thing you said is that they're educated because they're left-leaning because they're educated. That's a false frame. And this is exactly what I mean. And this is why many of you should stop using the term educated to compliment people by calling them educated. Usually when someone says that another person is educated, it's simply because you agree with them. And if you disagree with somebody, then you say they're not educated. Every day when I'm on here, I get people who tell me you're very educated and you're very smart. That's just because you agree with me. But if you disagree with me, you'd be telling me I was stupid. Even though my intelligence level is exactly the same. It's just my perspective calls you to say either I'm intelligent or I'm not, or I'm smart or I'm not, or I'm educated or I'm not. It has nothing to do with my level of education. It just has to do with how you feel about what I'm saying. So this word educated has lost its value because people keep throwing it around based on their personal opinion, not based on objective measures. The problem is the indoctrination, says Liz. Well, by who? Every side thinks the other side is indoctrinated with something bad. Stubborn said, go to TikTok. YouTube isn't there anymore. What are you talking about? David said, kids don't listen to NPR. Probably true. I don't even know what NPR puts out. I don't listen to NPR. Jay says, where was I? I lost my spot. Where was I? Jay says, every morning, why do people get on here giving advice and they don't have a degree in anything? So what people are you referring to, number one? So this is a good straw man frame here. It's not a question, but is it actually a good straw man frame by Jay? So Jay, you get the number 2 straw man frame of the day. I need someone to sponsor this. So any of you know an organization, any of you want to sponsor the straw man comment of the day, tell me, and you could be the title sponsor, the straw man comment of the day. So Jay says, people get on here giving advice and they don't have a degree in anything. So let's break this down piece by piece. First of all, having a degree in something does not mean you are qualified to give advice unless you're giving advice on how to get a degree. That's the only thing having a degree qualifies you for. So all the college graduates listening to this, I am a college graduate. Having a college degree does not qualify you to give advice. The only thing you're qualified to give advice on with a college degree is how to get a degree, because that's the only thing you've done. All right, because you have a degree in a subject does not mean you're an expert in the subject. It just means you're an expert in getting a degree in the subject. Getting a degree in a thing does not mean you know what you're talking about. You get a degree in history, you're not a historian. You get a degree in science, you're not a scientist. You get a degree in art, you're not an artist. So just because you get a degree in something does not mean you know anything on the subject, nor does it qualify you to give advice. Actually doesn't even mean anything, because anybody can give advice if they want to. You don't have to have any type of qualification to give advice. So again, this is a great straw man comment. I think you mean it seriously, but there's so many straw men in this. You could build a straw house. Simpson said, I've never seen a gross plastic bowl of word salad. What are you talking about? Poor analogy. I don't know what you're referring to. So I think you're trying to push back on something that I said, but I don't know what it is. And then right after that, TT says, this man is very updated with world and domestic issues. So you get one person telling me that I'm saying nothing and I'm terrible, and the next person telling me I'm great. Such is the internet. Mike said, how is PBS an arm of the Democrat Party? So here's straw man comment, the third straw man comment of the day by Mike. I never said that. So I don't know why you're even framing that question. You want me to respond to something that I never said, which I'm not doing. To Amber and Beyond, so I think you do these lives to sell yourself and you're a business, which is okay. Everything you say is moot. Straw man comment of the day. Is this a straw man? Yeah, this is a straw man. This is somewhat of a straw man. It's actually much more ad hominem, but let's address this one. This is funny. So we got to come up with a word. We got to come up with a term for this. This is like the ad hominem of the day. All right. So we're looking for 2 sponsors right now, folks. We need the straw man of the day, and we need the ad hominem of the day. So this is the ad hominem of the day. To Amber and Beyond, congratulations, Amber, that you do these lives to sell yourself. Well, first of all, Amber, you use the wrong form of sell. And I think it was you who said that you were a teacher. So you're using the wrong form of sell. It's SELL, meaning to sell. Sale means like the process of something being on sale, or the sale process. So sell is a different type of sell, the way you're using it here. Sell yourself in your business, which is okay. Well, first of all, I'm an entrepreneur. So everything I do, I'm selling myself, even if I'm not actually making an offer. Have I offered you all anything to buy here today? I haven't mentioned anything that you can buy from me. I mentioned Work on Your Game University when I first started this live, but I didn't tell you going into detail about it. And you said that's okay. Well, of course it's okay. I'm in charge. So everything I do is okay. I don't need your validation. And then you say everything I say is moot. Amber, if you really believed everything I said was moot, you wouldn't even have taken the time to leave a comment. You would have just exited the live and never engaged with anything that I do ever again, if you truly believe that. So I'm challenging. I don't think you believe that. Zost said, how do you feel about Doge? Zost, I did like 3 lives talking about Doge when it was the hot topic. It's not the hot topic anymore. It's kind of quiet. They're still doing what they're doing. It's just Elon is not on the front page anymore. But I did several lives talking about Doge and Elon himself, while a lot of people were mad at him because he was standing next to Donald Trump. And he was threatening a lot of things that were threatening people's quiet money coming from the government. But you can find those replays on my YouTube channel, Zost. Mike said, PBS has never struck me as some liberal tool. Is there some specific example that can be pointed to? Mike, I just spent the last hour and a half talking about them. So I don't know if you came in here late, but you should watch the replay on YouTube so you can get the answer to that question. JJ the Jet Plane said they sell merch. Remember the Tickle Me Elmo fiasco? Shit, they sold a lot of Tickle Me Elmos. Was that sold specifically by PBS? Who was the company that sold Tickle Me Elmo? Whoever that was, they made a lot of money. Shit, I want them to sell a Tickle Me Dre. They should make me a toy. Shit, whatever they did with that one, I want them to do that with mine. Selling Georgia said, I would give to Sesame Street personally if they went back to a wholesome message. What happened to Sesame Street? They changed up? I didn't know about this. Irma V, good morning to you. Thank you for the gifts and the badges. Mike said, why is it the modern day American conservative no longer conservative but just anti-left? Mike, you're asking the wrong person. That's not the topic here today, so I don't know why you're posting that in here. Taylor said, Trump can't defund NPS or PBR. Or NPR, PBS or NPR. Stop with that lie. Archie Bunker can't. What are you talking about, Archie Bunker? And Taylor Green, I don't know if you came in here late, but I framed this properly at the very beginning. That when I say Trump, I'm talking about the Trump administration. And he will either float a trial balloon, i.e. post it on social media, or he will threaten it, or he'll talk about it in interviews, or he'll say that he's going to do it. Now, whether he actually has literally done it or not, we don't even know yet. And most of the time, people don't even care. All people care about is the conversation. So, Taylor, you are responding to something that was not said. David said, I like listening to him too, but they're definitely biased. A lot of people think that. Then Taylor says, people, please read first and don't listen to people who just run their mouth. So are you referring to yourself? Because you're running your mouth in the comments right now. And read what? What are you suggesting that people read? So I don't respect passive aggression, folks. So if you disagree with something that I'm saying specifically, please just say specifically what your disagreement is. Don't be passive aggressive, especially if you're a man. I understand passive aggression from women, but I don't respect it in men. Liz said Bernie isn't independent. Well, it looks like he is listed as an independent. That's the reason why I said that. I don't think he's independent either, but it looks like he's listed as one. That's the whole point. David said, I watch and listen to both of them, definitely slanted. Some say. And there are other people who listen to them and say they're not slanted. So again, what do we do? Dana No Pants says, Trump sues CBS for editing the Kamala Harris interview. Yes, I knew about that. Taylor Green says, I watched PBS before he was born, and NPR just started to listen after Joe Madison passed away. So, what does that have to do with anything? Taylor, you've been listening to PBS for a long time. What does that mean? That means that whatever you say about PBS cannot be challenged? If so, that's a logical fallacy. Rogue said, I didn't vote for him, so that's not 100%. So what are you referring to? What are you talking about? Some of y'all got to give me context with your comments. Soze says, NPR had a bias for science and intellectuality, not good for Trump era. I get what you're saying there. So this is an ad hominem towards Trump and his supporters by saying, oh, well, anything that's based in science and being smart and being educated means that's the reason why Trump doesn't like it. Okay, we get it. The joke has already been made like 1,000 times over the last 10 years. Let's give me something of substance to respond to here, folks, please. I get it. You don't like Trump. You think he's not smart. You think his supporters are not smart. I get it. I heard you already. All right. I have no political affiliation. So you making that comment here doesn't do anything. Sharon said, good morning. Good morning to you. Stubbalicious said, yet you stayed and listened. Yes, exactly. So these people saying that what I'm saying is irrelevant, yet they're leaving comments. If you really think what I'm saying is irrelevant, you would have just left and go and listen to somebody else. Elijah said, trying to have debates on live with comments when they are limited is so asinine. They're not trying to have debates, Elijah K. You are misreading what they're doing. They're not trying to have debates. What they're doing is venting their frustration with their disagreement is coming out in the form of frustration. So they're leaving ad hominem and straw man comments as a way of venting their frustration. And they just want me to read their comments so that they can feel validated by the fact that I read it and responded to it. So I'm validating them by reading their comments. See, this is the reason why we get detractors in the comments, because I'm actually giving them attention. That's the reason why they're staying in here. So these people left this comment like 15 minutes ago, but they stayed here for 15 minutes just to see if I would read it. That's what I'm doing. So Angela said, we were never supposed to have a national sponsored news to prevent government propaganda. Okay, I'll leave that right there. Carla says, sponsored by NPR. Stubbalicious said, I'll sponsor a Get 'em trophy. It'll be worth $15. Okay, that's what we'll call it. The Get 'em trophy is when I call out people's logical fallacies. Actually, that might work. a get 'em trophy. All right, Stubborlicious, we got to talk about a price because sponsorship means you got to put some money on the table. So we'll talk about it. So there you go, Amber. There's me selling something. All right. Sponsored by Dre GPT. Dre GPT ain't paying for the sponsorship though. We got to get it sponsored by. We got to get sponsored by somebody who's gonna put some money down. Other people's money. See, a Dre GPT is my money, so I gotta get other people's money. I just told you about that. OPM, folks. Dana No Pants, I'm enjoying your views. Happy I came across you this morning. Me too, Dana. Thank you for being here. Ebo said, in most environments, don't tell your politics. Yeah, generally, that's what I'm saying. And the person who asked that question, they probably already know the answer. Any of you who has a full-time job and a career track position, I'm not talking about you work at Dunkin' Donuts, but you have a career track position, you probably should keep your politics to yourself. And you probably already know that. You probably already know. NPR Whisper Eyes makes the sheep feel we're enlightened. I don't know what that means. Tara Mills said, being an entrepreneur is the way to go. Not for everybody, Tara. You got to have the right makeup to be an entrepreneur. It's not for everybody. Stopalista said, that's an issue of self-awareness. I don't know what you're referring to there. Dowie MAK said, Dre, same, bro. I just speak my mind sometimes trying to leave the corporate plantation. Yeah, if you want to speak your mind, you got to get out of you can't work at a corporate job and speak your mind. Those don't go together. Last time that I checked, just from what I see from the outside looking in. Carla said, keep tapping the screen. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Carla, for moderating here, keeping everybody tapping the screen. We're at 35,000 likes, folks. Can we get to 40,000, please? Please. Sharon said, that's not true. What's not true? What are you talking about? Evo said, all politics are identity politics. Okay, I get what you're saying. When I say identity politics, I'm talking literally people using their identity as the reason why they want to lean one way or another, i.e., let me do this because I'm black, let me do this because I'm gay, let me do this because I'm a woman. That's what I mean. Subalicious said he did appoint black people to positions. He appointed people of color, Cash. Okay, so we want to mix in people of color. Yeah, you got Cash Patel. That's a good point. Michelle said, even if you had blacks in the cabinet, they would then say they were Uncle Tom's. You can't win. So there, Michelle gave you a great point right there. That's exactly what would happen. So no matter what you do, they're going to come up with something. So when Trump named his cabinet and there was no black people, a bunch of black people were like, oh, where are all the black people? Or they said all these black people who supported Trump and they still didn't get into the cabinet, LOL. Like, who was the black guy? Who's the guy from Carolina? What's that man's name? I forget the guy's name. Like, who's the guy from, I think he's from Carolina. What's that black dude's name? I forget his name. And then there's the guy from Florida, Donalds. He didn't get into the cabinet either. And people are like, look at these guys. They went in. Tim Scott. Is that his name? Tim Scott? Is he from Carolina? I think he's from either North or South Carolina. Tim Scott didn't get into the cabinet, and then Donalds didn't get in, and the previous administration was like Candace Owens. They're like, oh, these people work for Trump, and they didn't get in the cabinet, LOL. But if he had named one of them to the cabinet, all black people would then say, or the people who play identity politics, they say, oh, well, you're just a token for Donald Trump. That's a new term everybody's using now. Now you're a token. You're a token for Trump. Or you're an Uncle Tom, again, like Michelle just said there. So no matter what you do, they're going to come up with something. Sharon said Obama cabinet, because of Congress and the Senate, he couldn't do much, but he could have done better. Well, that's what people say about every president. That's the reason why I wouldn't get into politics. No matter what you do, people will have some problem with you. Stubbalicious said, who's in charge of getting wrongfully accused out of prison? Lawyers. Stubbalicious, the lawyer is. Your lawyer is in charge of getting you out of prison. Jay said, yeah, where you get your education from to be giving advice to people. Where do I need to get education from somewhere to give advice to people? I can give advice for any reason I want. When you walk down the street, there could be some bum living inside a cardboard box. He can offer you advice if he wants to. You ain't got to take it, but he can give it to you. You can completely ignore him if you want to, but he can give it if he wants. Advice is just talking. Everybody has the freedom of speech to talk. Jay, the same way I'm on here talking, you could be on here talking. And I'm not even giving advice here today. I do give advice in some of my content, but this ain't one of them. Here, I'm just talking about a current event. What advice have I offered? I don't think I've offered much advice here today. I'm just addressing a current event and just trying to argue both sides of the issue, both sides of talking points of the issue, and then telling you what I think about them. What advice have I offered? I don't think I've offered much advice here today. So, Jay, you got one of the straw man awards of the day from Stubbalicious, the Get 'em Award. But Stubbalicious, we gotta talk about the money now. Maestro said Obama did nothing but gay marriage and forced health insurance or be fined. Some say. Yeah, some people do say that about Obama. Some people do say that about Barack Obama. Let me see where we at comments wise. I lost my spot again. Where was I? Oh, here we go. Ebo said, not true. I disagree with many educated people. Yeah, so educated, let's just assume that the word educated means somebody who went to college and graduated. I think that's what most people mean when they say educated, that you went to college and graduated. I went to college and graduated. And the fact that I went to college and graduated has no bearing on why or how or if I can talk about any subject. Going to college and graduating only qualifies you to talk about going to college and graduating, because that's the thing you've done. You don't know something till you've done it. If you have not done it, you don't know it. Studying something in school is not doing it. So you went to school and you got a degree in fill in the blank, whatever you got your degree in. You don't know it until you are actually professionally doing it as a main occupation. Otherwise, you don't know that subject. Kelly's handcrafter said, "Is Scott Turner not a black male?" I don't even know who Scott Turner is. So who are you talking about? Who is he? Daniel said, "Trump not having a black cabinet means nothing. Don't forget he fought to desegregate Mar-a-Lago." Okay, fine. I mean, the desegregation of Mar-a-Lago, some could say, is anecdotal, but the first sentence that you said there is correct. Not having black people in his cabinet doesn't prove anything. And if he did have black people, that wouldn't prove anything. So KC with the lock said, "That's literally not how it works. You Trump haters just like to talk." What are you referring to? Daniel said, "I say you're articulate and a critical thinker, better framed than educated." Well, thank you. Actually, I agree with that frame, Daniel. Thank you. I'd rather say that too. I don't ever call myself educated, because I just told you why I don't call myself educated, because it's just people who went to college trying to put themselves above people who didn't go to college, as if because I went to college, that means I'm smarter than you, or that I can talk about things you can't talk about. I disagree with that. I know a lot of people who went to college and they don't know shit. They're not qualified to talk about anything. All they did was go to college. What that mean? The people who went to college working at Starbucks. What are you qualified to talk about? Just because you went to college? Even if you graduated. So going to college does not make you qualified to do anything other than, again, talk about going to college. And hopefully you can get a good job based on your degree. Hopefully that's what you want to do. But I'd rather somebody be able to think critically and articulate their perspectives than say, I went to school. And maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but every day on the internet, I hear from people, and there are some in these comments as an example, who went to college, and then they will defend their position by saying, I went to college, or I'm educated, or I got a degree in ABC. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? That means I can't challenge your point. That means whatever you say is true. That don't mean shit. That just means you know nothing. Going to college means you know less than nothing, because not only do you not know, but you think you know something. So that's even worse. See, if you don't know anything, you don't know anything, then that's fine. At least you know you're ignorant. But see, if you go to college and you still don't know anything, but you think you know something, that's worse. When I got out of college, I thought I knew stuff too, until I spent some years in the professional world, and I realized that going to college didn't make me know anything. But if you're 24 and you just got out of college a year or two ago, you probably think you're smart. But by the time you're 34, you probably realize that you were actually pretty dumb. J-Lo Excelling said, "Morning. Had to stop as topics seemed interesting. Popped up on my FYP. Shout out to the FYP. Got me on the FYP again on TikTok." Stubborn said, "I wasn't trying to be offensive. I promise." I don't think you were. I don't know if you're talking to me. Toker said, "Arm and Hammer." Strawman. That's Strawman. STRAW. Strawman. Arm and Hammer. Or somebody get me in touch with Arm and Hammer. We got to find the people. Dana No Pan said, "Charlie Kirk doesn't need to be college educated to school you on Christ or politics, for example." Right. Charlie Kirk didn't go to college. I didn't even know. But it's very interesting. It's not that interesting. I guess it's to be expected that still to this day, a lot of people, when they hear someone talk, if they don't like what you say, the first thing they do is try to find something about you on a personal level with which to discredit you. That's what people do. So if I'm black, for example, not if I'm black, I am black. If a black person hears me and they don't like something that I'm saying, the first thing they do is try to discredit me on a personal level rather than actually disagree with what I said. They can't discredit what I said. So you saw one of the comments earlier, I believe it was Amber, who said, "You do these lives to try to sell yourself, and then everything you say is moot." Well, what does that have to do with anything I said here today? Nothing. But what she's trying to do is undermine me personally because she disagrees with something that I said, but she can't argue with me logically because she wouldn't win. So she instead goes to the ad hominem, which is personal, which is much easier for most people to do. It's much easier to attack someone on a personal level than it is to address their actual argument, because addressing someone's actual argument requires logic, thinking, and rationality, whereas attacking someone personally just requires you to get upset and just think of what's the worst thing you could possibly say to the person. So in other words, the same stuff that a kindergartner would do, people who are 30, 40, 50 years old do the same thing. And if you just read through my comments, you'll notice this. certain subjects bring more of these people out than others. This one is not that hot button of a subject, but other subjects, there's a lot more of it. Today is actually kind of calm, believe it or not. Stubborn said, do people know who you are and what you do? LOL. For the most part, no. And they don't really care. What they care about is if they agree with me or they don't agree with me. That's really what it comes down to. Margaret Bertrand, good morning to you. Stubborn said, how embarrassing comments, super ignorant. Carla said, your superpower is shining through again. Thank you, Carla. Crystal said, you're very logical and intelligent. I love listening to you. Thank you. Georgia said, I think you're really knowledgeable about the topics you discuss. Thank you. And it's not even so much, honestly, it's not even so much about me, doing a deep dive on every topic. I mean, I guess it seems like a deep dive when I talk about it, but what I'm really doing is taking the topic at hand and addressing, bringing it up that most of you maybe have heard of it, but you haven't maybe thought about it a lot. Then I share the points of what are being said about that thing. And then I'm just telling you how I feel about the points. Not even so much about the subject, because I can pick pretty much any subject. So there's a couple of topics that we're probably going to get to this week. Y'all heard about the story of this black guy, and I don't even know where this was. You heard this thing about this black guy who his kid got shot by the cop, and then he went out and killed the cop as retaliation, and now he's arrested. And I think his hearing is either today or tomorrow as to whether or not he gets bond. Y'all hear about this black guy? I don't even know this guy's name. What was his name? I think it's Rodney Hinton. Rodney Hinton, I think that's his name. Let me check. Yeah, Rodney Hilton. Rodney Hilton Jr. is the guy's name. Y'all heard about this? So we might talk about this week. I got to decide. When I hear these stories, I got to decide if it's worth it to dedicate time to talking about this. I might talk about it. I might not. So this kid, I don't know if y'all heard this story, but this kid was running from the cops under suspicion of doing some crime. The cop is chasing him. He's got his body cam on. And the cop believes that he saw the kid holding a gun. So the cop opens fire and kills the kid. Kid's 18. Kid's dead. The kid's dad is now mad that his kid got killed by a cop. So the kid goes out and kills a cop. He didn't kill that cop. He went and killed a cop randomly. Now that guy is in jail. The dad is like 38. The kid is like, he was 18. The dad's like 38. So the dad went out and just killed a random cop in retaliation. Now he's in jail. And his hearing, I believe, is today, is if he's going to get bond. And what people are saying is that if he gets a bond set, let's say his bond is $1 million, people are going to go do a give, send, go and raise $1 million to get this guy out of jail in a way of showing, I guess, black solidarity for killing the cop. This is in Cincinnati. So all the race hustlers are talking about this. Tariq Nasheed, one of my favorite race hustlers, he's talking about that. And I might end up talking about this because it looks like it's going to become a big story. So we'll see about that. That one is pending. I might talk about that. The point that I was making here when I brought that up is that it's not so much about me caring so much about each topic, because I pick a different topic every day. It's just I like to break these things down in a logical and rational way to help people, to help create a frame around the conversation, because I see a lot of people, a lot of it is surface level, the things that people say. So 2-minute TikTok videos, 180 character, 280 character posts on social media, stuff taken out of context. So I like to give more complete context for an audience of people who want the context. Not everybody wants the context, as you can see. There are some people who don't like what I'm saying when I'm giving the context, and they get mad, and you see it in the comments. But for the people who want the context, that's what I do in these live streams. So I'm thankful that there's an audience of people who actually want to hear it. Because if there wasn't, I wouldn't be doing this. China H, good morning to you. Courtney said, this is a great vibe today. LOL. Thank you, Courtney. Good to see you. Roni said, they went woke. Well, who are you talking about? Are you talking about NPR and PBS? Probably. Cherryville said, what's woke about Sesame Street? Yeah, that's what I was asking. I didn't know what happened to Sesame Street. I didn't know Sesame Street switched up on us. Did Sesame Street start doing the boys can become girls thing? Stubbalicious said he works on what comes back and it ain't the Dems shit. I don't know what you're referring to there. O'Neill said, this is my favorite morning show. Appreciate you, sir. Linda B, 2165, good morning. Oh, Stubbalicious said he's listed as indie because he hasn't still he knows the Dems are unhinged in 2080 with their shit. Has he always been indie? How long has he been indie? That's the question. Daniel said, your masterclass on logical fallacy is needed by a lot of us commenters. Well, people who actually use logical fallacies, Daniel, don't want to hear a class on logical fallacies. Then it's holding them too accountable. That's Daniel. Appreciate you. Carla said, even if you don't like Trump, you should respect the office of the president. It's ridiculous. Well, yes, exactly. That's the whole Saquon Barkley thing from last week. Stubbs says, Stubbs limited money, LOL. So we got to find a sponsor who's going to put some money up. Carla said the Get 'em trophy is a great idea. We might start calling it that, the Get 'em trophy. I got to figure out how to make it work. DM said, always listen to this on my way to work. I love the logical responses from you. Thank you, DM. Michelle said, respect is earned, not given. I agree. Susie said, I am close to retirement, have a government job, and keep using my Trump mug. Oh, congrats to you. Well, you work in the government. I guess you get away with it in the government with the Trump mug. If you worked in corporate, you might want to keep that at home. Fitzgerald Styles said, you got to wear all hats all the time. Yeah, true. Roni said, Vivek. Tim Scott. Yeah, Tim Scott. That's what I was thinking about, Tim Scott. No, not Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson wasn't, I don't think he was ever in line to be in the, because Tim Scott campaigned for Trump. He would do events with Trump. So people thought he might get named to the cabinet, but he wasn't named. Yeah, South Carolina. That's what I thought. I thought it was Carolina, that guy. All right, a couple more questions. We got 12 minutes here, folks, then we'll wrap this up. I don't go past 10 o'clock. So we start at 8. We end at 10 every day, in case any of you didn't know. Yeah, Tim is from South Kakalaki. Yes. Marty Satt, thank you for the follow. A coin and a bootlicker are the new terms. Yeah, those ain't new terms. Those are old terms. They just get refreshed. That's the whole point. Liz said Byron is running for governor of Florida. Yeah, I saw that. The only thing DeSantis did that I didn't like is that when that bald-headed kickboxer came to Florida, he said, we're going to open an investigation. I'm like, how can you just open an investigation against a person just because? Like, based on nothing. He said, we're going to open an investigation on this guy. You know what I'm talking about, the bald-headed kickboxer? And DeSantis announced that. That's the only thing DeSantis has done that I'm like, what the hell are you doing? That didn't make any sense. And nothing came of it. And then Byron Donalds, who is a supporter of, I guess, DeSantis, he co-signed it. So before that, I liked Byron Donalds. I heard him on the Breakfast Club where he was getting attacked. You know, they bring the black woman attack dog every time a conservative comes on the Breakfast Club. And he handled her very well. And I said, okay, this guy, I actually like this guy. It's the first time I really heard him talk kind of more off the cuff rather than prepared statements. And I liked him. But then he co-signed that nonsense that DeSantis did. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I heard DeSantis' wife is going to run. So I guess Donald's going to run against DeSantis' wife. We'll see how that turns out. Whoever wins, I just hope it's somebody on the right. That's all I'm hoping. I'm hoping that it's whoever wins Florida governorship, I believe is next year, right? 2026. I just hope it's a person on the political right because I like what DeSantis did with the virus 5 years ago. Georgia says some of these comments are nonsense. Wouldn't it be easier to stroll on? No, they're here. That's why they're here, Georgia. They're here to say the nonsense, so they want me to read it all out because they know I might read it. So that's why they leave the comment because they want me to read it all out. That's the whole point. Jenna said, educated isn't the same as intelligent or those who have experience in the art of delivery. Yes, exactly. So educated just means you went to school. I'm assuming that's what people mean when they say educated. That's not really what they mean. Actually, half of people, when they say educated, they mean you went to school. So they'll try to use that to discredit you. So, for example, the person earlier, I believe the name was Jay, he was saying people don't have a degree in anything but they're giving advice. So basically what they're trying to purport is that I don't have a degree, but I actually do have a degree. But I don't talk about the fact that I have a degree. So sometimes I get people trying to use that against me. Then they realize that they're wrong. So then they just pivot to a different subject. They say, oh, well, you don't have a degree in this subject, so you shouldn't be talking about it, which is the next. Again, it's just more levels. It's kind of like what Michelle said. No matter how you knock down their bullshit, they come up with some more bullshit. And you can never win. So it's not a game you actually want to get in because you're not going to win. It's the rat race. Or when the people say educated, what they mean is you don't know enough about that subject. So they try to discredit your opinion by saying you don't have enough information on the subject. That's why you shouldn't talk about it. But if my opinion was one that they agreed with, they wouldn't be saying that. So it's a bullshit argument. Because if I'm uneducated on a subject, even if you agree with me, you should still be calling me uneducated. Because if I'm uneducated, I'm uneducated. The fact that you agree with me shouldn't change the fact that I'm uneducated or that I am educated. So somebody can be very educated on a subject. I can just disagree with you. But I can't say you're uneducated. I just don't I don't agree with your perspective. Most people don't have the logical ability and the ability to be dispassionate in order to say something like that. You ever hear anybody say anything like that? Like, hey, you're very educated on the subject, but I disagree with you. How often do you hear anybody say that? You never hear anybody say that. Even though that's what they should say, nobody says it. So that's why I'm here. All right, I'm in the marketplace to offer something that's not being offered. KP then said, educated does not equal intelligence. I agree. You can be educated on a subject and still have a low IQ. I also agree. You can also be educated on a subject and not know shit about it because you haven't done anything in it. Again, it's like somebody goes to school, they graduated 6 months ago. It's May, right? So people are graduating from college right now. So people graduate from college, they got their degree, and they think they know something because they got a degree. Like, you don't know shit. What do you know? You haven't done anything. You sat in the classroom for 4 years, took notes, and passed tests. What do you know? Nothing. So that's what I say to educated people, quote unquote educated. Stop Alicia said, "Oh God, I wish the world thought more like you." Well, keep dreaming. Jenna said, "Applying what you learned is the next level of intelligence." That's right. There are 5 levels of expertise. Let me see if I can remember all 5. I've talked about this many times. Level 0 is doing nothing. Level 1 is you are consuming, i.e., sitting in the classroom taking notes. That's consuming. Level 2 is you are applying. So that's kind of like you go and you start working in the space in which you have a degree. So let's say you get a degree in, let's pick a subject. Let's say you get a degree in broadcasting. Okay, so level 0 is you're doing nothing. Level 1 is you went to school, you got a degree in broadcasting. Level 2 is you get a job in broadcasting. So now you're actually doing broadcasting. Level 3 is when you start teaching new hires how to do the job. When you can teach people what you know, that's when you really know your stuff. When you can start teaching it. Level 3 is when you get real. When you can start teaching things that you have actually done. Level 4 is when you can start naming your price for teaching what you know. So meaning you can go out into the open market and say, somebody got to pay me this much money to teach this, and somebody actually pays it. That's level 4. And level 5 is when people come to you asking you to pay you for the things that you know. That's the highest level of expertise. So there are 5 levels of expertise, and that's the way it works. Going to school is level 1 of expertise, and there are 5 levels. So people who just learned it, you're at level 1, and there's a long way for you to go. Liz said, that was terrible. People are backing Hilton. Yeah, so we might talk about that. That's probably going to be a different. Yeah, he did. Kate, he killed a different cop. That's what makes the story crazy. It'd be one thing if he killed the same cop. Then I could somewhat see what he did. I could 10% understand him if he killed the same cop. He just went and killed a random cop. He was just mad at cops, period. So he just said, whatever cop I see, I'm just kill that cop. And that's what he did. That's crazy. That man is something wrong with his head to do that. And people are saying, oh, well, black people have been getting attacked by cops for years, so this is justice. Like, please. And they're saying that on social media, of course. You ain't going out and doing it, but you're going to co-sign somebody else doing it. But anyway, we're going to see what happens with this guy. I'm probably going to talk about that because it looks like it's about to become a bigger story, especially if he gets bond and the judge says he can bond out, meaning he can put up some money to get out of jail between now and his court date. This is going to become a viral news story. It's somewhat viral right now. It's kind of like in the shadows viral, a lot of black people talking about it. But if it goes more viral, i.e. white people start talking about it, then I'll probably talk about it myself. But if only black people talking about it, I might not talk about it, just to be honest. There's more white people than black people in the world. So, especially in America. So I am in the marketing space, so we got to play to the crowd. Shina said, I heard about it, but don't know the details. I don't know all the details yet, but that's pretty much all we know. His kid got killed. And the whole thing is, there's the other piece of it. The body cam footage is the kid was like hiding in between some dumpsters, the cop who has the body cam on. So the cop is running, trying to find the suspects, and the kid runs out from behind the dumpster. So in that flash of a second when he runs out behind the dumpster, the cop sees him. He's like 10 feet away from him. And there's a little sticker on the side of the dumpster. And the cop is saying that when the kid ran by, he thought he saw the flash of a gun being held like this because the cop is like over here. So the kid is running this way and the cop is to his left. So when the kid runs by, the cop says, I thought I saw this guy holding a gun because you see this shiny thing right near his chest area. So the cop grabs his gun and opens fire and kills the kid. And then when you look at the replay on slow motion of the body cam footage, it looks like on the side of the dumpster is just a sticker, a flashy, like a shiny sticker is not a gun. So people are questioning, was that actually a gun the kid was holding or was it a sticker? But it's a bang-bang situation, for lack of a better term. You don't have time to slow down and do slow motion. Somebody pointing a gun at you, you pull your gun out and you use it. Deadly force. All right, shoot to kill. And that's what the cop did. So this cop is probably not going to be arrested or incarcerated anyway for what he did because he had a reason to believe the kid had a gun. And if he happened to be wrong, then he just happened to be wrong. That's kind of how it goes, unfortunately, however people want to feel about that. And then people are saying, well, since the cop was wrong, that's okay for another cop to just get offed or this cop to go to jail. It becomes a complicated situation, which is why I'm probably going to end up talking about it. And the more I talk about it now, the more I'm probably going to need to talk about it. So it's coming. We'll see. Live Free say he's not getting bond. Don't speak too soon. We will see. I think it's today. I think the hearing is today. Let me see if I can find out when his hearing is. I thought people were saying that it's going to be today. But if he gets bond, then people are going to do the Gibson Go, try to raise money for him. So 1 hour ago, this woman named Morella Porter, she is in Cincinnati. She's a reporter. So here's what she says. The deputies are filing into the courtroom ahead of the bond hearing. He is charged with aggravated murder, accused of intentionally hitting another cop with his car and killed the guy. So a bunch of cops are coming into the hearing. So it looks like they're coming in just to show solidarity with the other cop because this cop just got randomly killed. So there's a whole bunch. So what she's saying is Morella says the suspect, he got escorted out of the courtroom briefly because his brother, who came to the hearing, refused to sit down. So they got a whole family of craziness here. First of all, your son is out there doing something. They got the cops chasing him. He's running from the cops. So he entered a not guilty plea for the aggravated murder. He entered not guilty. I don't know how he's going to, whatever. He entered not guilty. So dude's brother came to court and he wouldn't sit down. I don't know what this is. This is in the courtroom before the hearing even starts. They can't even start the hearing because dude won't sit down. So the dude who killed the cop, the dad, his brother came to the hearing. He wouldn't sit down, so they couldn't even start the hearing. Okay, all right. I could pretty much guarantee you I'm going to be talking about this. I don't know when, probably tomorrow, but we'll see. We're waiting. I want to find out if he gets bond or not. We'll probably know by the end of the day. So the bond hearing was interrupted. Somebody was escorted out. All right, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so we don't have an outcome yet, but there's a whole bunch of cops in there at the bond hearing, so they're making their presence felt because he killed the cop. You kill a cop, not a good idea to end up in jail after killing a cop. Anyway, 2 minutes here, folks, then we'll wrap this one up. 2 characters, Julian and Gonzo. Is that what they did? Roni, Teresa Rodriguez, is that Boy Can Become a Girl? Sesame Street did that? I need confirmation. Is that what happened? Julian and Gonzo on Sesame Street? Let me check that. Yeah, I gotta check that. I didn't hear about this. If that's what they did, that's crazy. I hope that didn't happen. Dana said, I watched a great deal of it this morning. What, the hearing? Did he get bond? Did he get bond? Does anybody know if this guy got bond? Because that's crazy. Mitzi, good morning to you over there on IG. Sounds like a great bunch of people. Yeah, it's looking crazy. This is going to make a civil war. No, black people don't want a civil war because we wouldn't win. We ain't got enough people. Why would we want a civil war when there's 5 times more white people than black people? This is a bad idea. Bruce said, I like the way you think sometimes. Fair enough, Bruce. Fast and Furious said that press conference with the family was a mess. What was up with Grandpa smirking and smiling? I don't know. The other cop shouldn't have felt the vengeance. Yeah, that was a bad idea. If it was the same cop, I would kind of understand. Kind of. I still wouldn't think that's a good idea. But he just killed a random cop. That's crazy. That man's out of his mind. That dude's out of his mind. So, let's see. My psychologists are educated but have no... Susie said, I know a lot of professionals like psychologists are educated but have no common sense. Well, if they're stuck in their spaces, then maybe that's why. Give Send Go to raise funds for the Get 'em trophy. Maybe we'll do that. All right, so I'm just trying to get verification of the bond thing, and also I was asking about the Sesame Street thing, but I didn't get an answer from anybody on either one, but I'll find out about both. I doubt we're going to talk about Sesame Street ever again. But what was those 2 characters? Let me ask, are there characters on Sesame Street that are changing their gender or preaching that a boy can become a girl? Question mark. I heard this on TikTok in my live stream this morning and wanted to verify if you know anything about it. All right. This is the last thing we're going to find out for today. Gonzo and Julian. So, Roni, that's what I'm asking. Are these, they can change their genders? Is that what it is? And that's on Sesame Street? I'm just trying to get verification of that. That's what I'm asking you. Yes? So, Roni says yes, this is a real thing. So ChatGPT, see, this is the reason why y'all can't depend on ChatGPT. It says there are no official reports or credible evidence. What the hell does that even? No credible evidence that Sesame Street has introduced characters who change gender or that the show is promoting that a boy can become a girl. The core characters are consistent identities. However, Sesame Street has taken steps to reflect diversity and inclusivity in its programming. Not a fan of that. So it introduced a gay couple, Dave and Frank. Sesame Street has a gay couple? Okay, that's enough. That's all I need to know. That's crazy. Sesame Street has a gay couple. I didn't know this. And they have a daughter. So it's Dave and Frank, two guys, and they got a daughter. How do two men create a daughter? In an episode titled Family Day. This happened on Sesame Street? I didn't notice. Okay, so yeah, I'm with Trump on this. Defund PBS and NPR. I didn't notice. There's a gay couple on Sesame Street with a daughter. And the show has featured LGBTQ guest stars, such as actual humans. Okay, that one ain't that bad, but I wouldn't want that shown to my kids because they're not old enough to understand what's happening. So I don't see anything. What was those two people's names? Gonzo and Julian. All right, so let me ask about Gonzo and Julian. So we got to get to the bottom of this. Actually, we can't end the live until I get to the bottom of this. Gonzo and Julian. All right, so I'm asking ChatGPT about that. That's all I said. Gonzo and Julian. Just see what they said. They had a pride parade on Sesame Street. Really? I didn't notice. They had a pride parade on. I didn't notice. Yeah, that's not good. So here's what they say. They say, according to ChatGPT, and again, they get their information from the internet, it appears there may be some confusion regarding characters named Gonzo and Julian. Let's clarify. This is ChatGPT's clarification. Let's see how y'all feel about this. Gonzo is from The Muppet Show. And in The Muppet Babies, he has expressed a desire to wear a dress to a royal ball and adopt the persona Gonzarella. The storyline was designed to promote themes of self-expression and acceptance. While some viewers interpreted this as a nod to non-binary identity, the show did not explicitly label Gonzo's gender identity. The intent was to encourage children to be true to themselves and accept others as they are. This is the language game bullshit that I'm talking about. They got this straight from Sesame Street. I don't know where they got this from. This is what I mean. So I appreciate you sharing this. Who was that left that comment, that name? Roni Teresa Rodriguez, thank you for pointing this out. This is exactly what I mean. When I say they are smart people, they know how to language things in a way to trick you. This is it. Did y'all hear what I just read? So Gonzo, I guess we assumed he was a male, he wanted to put on the dress and be Gonzarella. And they say some people interpreted this as a nod to non-binary identity. They interpreted it as a nod to, that's how they interpreted it. It just made that up out of nowhere, right? The show did not explicitly label gender identity. This is how they talk around it. When you try to call them out, they try to talk around it with language just like this. What I'm pointing out to you. The intent was to, listen to the sentence again. The intent was to encourage children to be true to themselves and accept others as they are. This is bullshit. This is teaching kids that if you're a boy, you can become a girl. That's exactly what it is. And they try to talk around it by using this flowery liberal language. Julian. Let's see about Julian. Last thing, then we'll go. There is no character named Julian who expresses gender identity, but there's a Canadian educational initiative featuring a puppet named Julian, created by Jasmine Roy, Sophie Desmaros. I don't know what any of this is. This is separate from Sesame Street. So they say this is separate from Sesame Street. Now, while Sesame Street has introduced characters to reflect diversity and promote inclusivity, I'm not a fan of them doing that. There are no characters on the show who have changed gender or are used to convey messages about gender transition. See, this is bullshit language. This is bullshit language that got taught to them by lawyers. See, this is what I mean. And this is the reason why I break this stuff down, so y'all can understand how they just talk around you. That's what they do. They talk circles around you. And if you can't catch their bullshit and ask them the right question to corner them, then they will easily just talk all the way around you and you don't even realize what they did. That's exactly what they do. So that Gonzo thing is exact proof of it. But if you ask them, hey, we didn't do that. We didn't explicitly do that. All we did was tell kids that they can express themselves. That's bullshit. I don't want my kid watching that. So yes, Donald Trump, defund PBS. You got my vote. PBS got to go. Now that I know about that. All right, so everybody. All right, we are wrapping this one up. And we will be here tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We might be talking about this guy who killed the cop, a random cop, in retaliation for his son. We might talk about something else, so don't hold me to that subject. We'll see what happens between today and tomorrow. And between then, get PBS defunded. You want to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach, get into our coaching program, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. I didn't even mention a book here today, but since I got accused of trying to sell something, let me sell you a book. Get a copy of my book called The Third Day, The Discipline That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. This book is all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. You can get this book for free by going to thirddaybook.com. The book's free, just cover the shipping. Just go to Third Day, this is the name of the title, thirddaybook.com. I'll give you a free copy of the book. Just cover the shipping. We'll ship you the book. Once you do that, you'll be on my email list as well. You get my emails every day in addition to being here on these lives. So since everybody thinks I'm trying to sell something there, I sold you something. I sold you my book that I'm giving you for free. All right, so I'll see you all tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you, Cargo, for keeping in here. We got the 45,000 likes. I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. Topic TBD. Everybody have a great Tuesday. We out of here.